Meet Qin Tian. Most would call being stranded on a desert island a nightmare. But for him, it is a tropical vacation filled with fresh coconut water and savory roasted snake. To top it off, he is stuck with the school's most beautiful goddess. Talk about a blessing in disguise. Only 24 hours ago, he was living it up on a luxury cruise for his graduation trip. Suddenly, a massive storm tore through the sea, sending the vessel to the depths. With a name like Titanic, they should have seen the omen coming. Amidst the chaos, he managed to grab a life buoy, narrowly escaping a watery grave. After drifting for ages, he woke up on an isolated shore. Luckily, his obsession with survival gear meant he had a knife on him. Finally, his hobby was about to save his life. The island was a goldmine of coconuts, perfect for quenching his desperate thirst. As he gulped down the juice, a holographic survival system flickered into existence. He stared at the starter gift, wondering if he had finally lost his mind. Congratulations, host! You have received the Common Flora and Fauna Encyclopedia. A sharp migraine surged through his skull as vast amounts of forbidden survival knowledge flooded his brain. One glance at a coconut revealed its every detail. Pure magic. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the trees. He did not hesitate and sprinted toward the source. It was the campus goddess, the Lin. She was cornered by a terrifying serpent. The system identified it as a harmless water snake. With total confidence, he grabbed the beast by the tail and slammed it against a tree. A true hero saves the beauty. After the kill, he turned away and casually told her, "You should probably put some clothes on first. No need to offer yourself to me so quickly." Flustered, she realized he had seen her drying her wet clothes by the shore. She had not expected to find such a handsome gentleman here. As she watched him, she realized he was a man of honor, who would not take advantage of her. Wait, am I not attractive enough for him to even steal a glance? Girls really are a mystery sometimes. Discovering they went to the same school lifted her spirits. The rescue team will be here any minute, she chirped. Then we can finally go home. Her innocence was almost painful. Not wanting to crush her dreams, he simply suggested, "Let's focus on building a fire to survive the night first." An hour passed as they scavenged the shoreline for supply, but they came up completely empty. Was he doomed to rub sticks together like a caveman? Suddenly, the Lin spotted a plastic bottle buried deep in the sand. He stopped her just as she was about to toss it. Filling it with water, he gathered dry grass. He was going to use the bottle as a lens to ignite the tinder. After a tense wait, a wisp of smoke appeared. It was working. All those hours watching survival shows were finally paying off. As night fell, they huddled by the warmth of the flames. He kept her spirits up, promising that help was surely on the way. They just had to wait, but they could not wait on an empty stomach. With lightning speed, he began prepping that morning's snake for dinner. The Lin watched in horror, declaring she would rather starve to death than touch a single bite. Snake meat. Ignoring her protests, he grilled 2 large skewers over the fire. More for him than, and damn, it tasted incredible. Her stomach betrayed her with a loud growl. The aroma of the sizzling meat was becoming impossible to ignore. Her mouth began to water uncontrollably. Just one tiny bite would not hurt, right? She reached out and took a skewer. One taste, and her eyes widened in pure delight. "This is amazing," she gasped. Who knew snake could be this delicious? Qin Tian chuckled. "Slow down. There's plenty more where that came from. Try this piece, big brother." It was perfectly crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. A gourmet meal in the middle of nowhere? Despite her earlier drama, the Lin was now completely hooked. The irresistible scent broke her resolve, and she lunged for the last skewer. As she crunched away, a blue notification pinged in his vision. Host successfully started a fire. Reward, 100 points. It seemed he was the only one who could see this interface. Best to keep it quiet. He did not want to end up as a lab rat for some secret research project. This was straight out of a video game. But what could a measly 100 points actually buy in the system shop? The system reacted instantly to his thoughts. It was bound to his very consciousness. The shop items lacked descriptions, but the names told him enough. The only problem? Everything was ridiculously overpriced. The cheapest item was 2,000 points. His 100 points were basically pocket change. To make matters worse, the quest board was completely empty. How is he supposed to earn more? It looked like he would have to figure this mystery out one day at a time. Later that night, as the beauty drifted off, Qin Tian marveled at her innocence. How could she sleep so soundly in such a dangerous place? She was lucky he was a man of honor. In the hands of someone else, this island would have become a living nightmare for her. A sudden chill woke him in the dead of night. Beside him, the Lin was trembling violently from the cold. It took several tries to rouse her from her deep sleep. Fortunately, she was not in shock, but she immediately misinterpreted his intentions. She scrambled back, thinking he was trying to get frisky. She would not listen to reason, no matter how much he tried to explain. Finally, he snapped. "If you do not want to freeze to death, get over here." Despite her fear, the biting cold was even more terrifying. He sighed, offering her the only warmth available in this desolate place. Come here if you don't want to freeze. The desert's brutal cold finally sank in. It defied logic. Even near the equator, the air turned into an icy blade. Dressed for warmth, we were defenseless. The temperature was plummeting dangerously. Hypothermia was coming. We must share body heat. It's our only way to survive. She thought he was a creep. With a firm glare, she flatly refused. But as numbness set in, she hesitated. Could she embrace him to stay alive? Desperation won. Deep Lamb revealed her curves, catching him completely off guard. In movies, don't the leads always strip to survive the frost? She whispered. Awkwardness filled the air. Not that far, he said, pulling her into a tight embrace. They endured the night together. Finally, the sun broke through the horizon. The sunrise was beautiful, but survival called. The tide is out. Grab the seafood. The hunt was chaos. A massive crab pinched her, and she cried out in pain. They secured a feast. He cleaned the crabs, and her regret turned to gratitude. Don't overeat, he warned. Crabs are cold-natured and will ruin your stomach. They grilled the catch on hot stones. No seasoning, just the taste of survival. We can't stay on the beach tonight, Tanthin declared firmly. We must retreat into the jungle. We need shelter from the bone-chilling wind. Staying here meant freezing to death. The cold was a silent killer. Besides, the jungle hides more secrets. We might find better food in there. He secured water and left an SOS sign. If help came, they'd be ready. He pulled off his belt. Pervert, she gasped. He only needed it to climb. A survival trick from TV, the belt's tension locked his legs to the tree. Physics became his ally. The loop provided friction and prevented a fatal fall. They harvested a bounty of coconuts, filling every bottle they had found. Fresh nectar was gold. She tried to hoard them all, but he stopped her. Too much will make you sick. In the wild, illness is a death sentence. She obeyed. They carved a massive SOS into the sand, a prayer for rescue. Into the green abyss. Following a water snake, they searched for fresh water. He traced an animal trail through the brush. She was amazed by his skills. The jungle was a labyrinth, far larger and more menacing than they expected. Midday arrived without water. I must start a fire before we lose the light. Then, the sound of salvation. A trickling stream. Luck had finally found him. She rushed to drink, but he stopped her. Killers hide in raw water. Boil it. Safety first. They chose a camp away from the water to avoid predators. Flash floods could sweep us away. No mistakes? He found the perfect high ground. He'd handled the heavy labor. Her mission was to find massive leaves for bedding. He gave her a knife for defense. Starting fire in this humidity was brutal. The sun was dipping. 2 p.m., only a few hours left for shelter. He smashed stones together to craft a jagged, primitive stone axe. Time was the enemy. Precision gave way to desperation as shadows grew long. With raw strength, he began felling. Every swing was an exhausting race. He gathered 9 small trees, a humble foundation for a night in the wild, 30 kilos of timber on his back. His farm boy strength was their lifeline. She returned with banana leaves. Together, they began building their sanctuary. As night fell, they stood before their lean-to, their only shield against nature. It was simple. They used tree bark to lash the timber together. A single sturdy support beam and a slanted roof were all they needed. After sharpening the thickest log, he drove it deep into the soil using a heavy stone. Leaning the windbreaker against it created a perfect shelter. Their makeshift home was finally complete. But the pathetic side of it left Deep Lamb feeling utterly disappointed. It looked worse than a dilapidated stable. He insisted its function was excellent, warning her not to underestimate this humble shack. Despite being open on one side, it reflects the campfire's heat directly onto them. This way, the biting cold will be kept at bay. Suddenly, the system pinged. Host built a trash-tier camp. 1,000 points awarded. He could only offer a bitter, helpless smile. A trash tent? Why don't you build it then? Stop complaining. Later, they boiled water in plastic bottles. It was slightly toxic, but far better than drinking raw water. Their next hurdle was food. They were over an hour from the coast, making it impossible to catch the early morning low tide. Tomorrow, we check the banana grove deep, Lamb mentioned. Perhaps we will find fruit. As he pondered, Deep Lamb suddenly struck him hard. She was only swatting a mosquito. Tanthin instantly sensed the danger. In these deep, dark woods, every insect carries a lethal toxin. A single bite causes days of agony. A swarm could trigger a fatal allergic shock. I have to find a way to stop them. As mosquitoes swarmed Deep Lamb, he whistled loudly to draw their focus. Then, he tossed fresh greenery onto the fire to smoke them out. Moments later, Tanthin suggested they take turns keeping watch to guard against the prowling predators of the night. Before he could even finish, Deep Lamb had drifted into a deep sleep. Leaning against the wood, he watched over her. Tonight, he would be her lone guardian. The rustling forest wind joined the crackling flames. These trials would only make them stronger. Tomorrow would surely bring a brand new hope. How can you sleep like that? It is truly impressive. He stayed awake all night after a grueling day. He must have been utterly exhausted. The night was long and tedious, so he began braiding rope. He knew it would be vital later. Soon, the sky began to brighten. Deep Lamb enjoyed a peaceful slumber while he never closed his eyes. Watching her sleep sitting up, he wondered if she could even pull her weight tonight. They trekked toward the banana forest in search of a meal. Along the way, they found raspberries. The hungry Deep Lamb took a bite and winced at the sourness. They were not ripe yet. Luckily, they found mature bananas later, but they were far too high to reach. Qin Tian pulled out his handmade rope. He tied a stone to the end to create a makeshift hook. With a focused aim, he hurled it at the cluster and dragged the bounty down. He meant to share, but her arrogance soured his mood. He expected a grand feast, but the wild bananas were as hard as stone. They were packed with seeds and completely inedible. "Forget the fruit," he told her. "We are eating meat." They turned to the banana leaves to hunt for worms. "These larvae have 6 times the protein of beef. We cannot let them go to waste." They gathered a horde, returned to camp, and began grilling. The taste was rich, resembling silkworm pupae. It was actually better than snake meat, and Deep Lamb found herself craving even more. Qin Tian suddenly destroyed their only plastic bottle, sending her into a panic. "Are you insane?" He calmly explained it was the only way to trap fish. Deep Lamb was baffled. How could a broken bottle catch anything? He recalled seeing schools of fish in the stream during their trek. With this clever trap, they could catch small prey. Qin Tian quickly fashioned the bottle, piercing a small hole at the bottom for water flow. He explained the fish would swim right in. Though skeptical, Deep Lamb chose to trust his vision. They headed to the stream to set the snare. He carefully wedged the bottle between submerged rocks. The drainage hole was specifically designed to create a current that lures the fish inside. Filling the bottle with stones added the necessary weight to keep it stable. He used the leftover worm scraps as the perfect bait. Deep Lamb grew curious. Why not set the trap near the camp? Why did we have to trek all the way to this specific spot? The water is cooler here, and the moss is thick, providing the perfect cover for fish. Naturally, this is the prime hunting ground. Suddenly, a refreshing scent filled the air. It was wild mint. This plant was a natural, potent repellent against blood-sucking mosquitoes. We should transplant some around our tent. If we do that, we will never have to worry about those pests again. Hearing it could repel mosquitoes, Deep Lamb was overjoyed. She dug up as much as possible, and they planted a protective ring around their shelter. Now, the mosquitoes would not bother them tonight. He then used tree bark to lash sharp stones together, crafting a primitive stone axe. The system announced he had earned 200 crafting points. That made it the second time he had gained points in a single day. Is it possible that crafting survival gear is a goldmine for points? If so, the high-tier shop items might not be so far out of reach. After lunch, they returned to the beach for coconuts. However, the fruits they had spent so much effort gathering had already been raided. He meticulously studied the jagged cracks on the shells. This was not the work of a human. Only a coconut crab possesses such devastating strength. Following the tracks in the sand, he mapped out its path. The thief had been stealing fresh coconuts directly from the canopy above. Seeing the culprit, Deep Lamb began to salivate. "It is massive. This will be a legendary dinner. It is time for payback for our stolen fruit." They watched from the shadows. They knew these crabs could open coconuts, but they did not expect it to peel them like a simple banana. It was effortless, requiring almost no strength at all. The beast stripped the coconut bare as if it were nothing more than a soft fruit. His expression twisted into a devious smirk as he prepared to plunder the creature's bitter prize. The poor beast fumed in silence, utterly powerless to stop his shameless theft. Once again, he snatched away its hard-earned spoils of war. The guy even had the nerve to taunt it, daring the creature to come and catch him. To any observer, he looked like a madman who had been stranded far too long. Once the coconuts were split, he used a sturdy rope to bind the beast for dinner. With such a massive haul of coconuts, they could only manage a fleeting rest on the shore. He felt a pang of regret as the tide began its inevitable retreat. It was a shame the sun was setting so soon, or they could have scoured the waves for seafood. Nearby, Deep Lamb's tears began to fall once more. 3 days had passed without a sign of rescue, making her wonder if they'd been abandoned. However, she quickly steeled her resolve and regained her fighting spirit. They couldn't just sit and wait for death. Survival was their only option. Moments later, they returned to the fish trap to check their luck. As expected, 3 small fish were waiting inside, though the trap was far too tiny. If only it were larger, they surely would have hauled in a true bounty. He decided to gut the catch on the spot. Those greedy little fish had picked every single banana worm used as bait, completely clean. The fresh innards would make perfect bait for the next round. That's the beauty of a trap. No guarding needed. Just harvest the rewards at the right time. Furthermore, as long as the structure remained undamaged, this trap would provide a limitless supply of food for their survival. Ding! The system chimed with a new notification. The fishing mission was complete, rewarding the host with 500 precious points. With his balance now exceeding 2,000 points, the system shop was finally within reach. That night, they feasted on a magnificent seafood banquet. The crab meat was divine succulent, sweet, and infused with a delicate coconut aroma. It was a truly satisfying meal for the weary pair. He turned in early, reminding his sister to wake him at midnight for the watch shift. Deep Lamb assured him that he had absolutely nothing to worry about. Yet, alone in the suffocating darkness of the dense forest, terror gripped her. Suddenly, a hand reached out, making her heart nearly leap out of her chest. Relief washed over her as she realized it was only Tan Thien, waking up early to take over the watch so she could rest. She intended to stay up out of guilt for the previous night, but he wouldn't allow it. With a moment of peace, he browsed the shop for his 2,000-point prize. He also brewed a steaming cup of mint tea, letting the sharp aroma sharpen his senses for the long night ahead. Deep Lamb mumbled about rescue teams in her sleep, stirring a dark thought in his mind. If help didn't arrive within 7 days, her spirit might shatter completely. He gently draped his jacket over the sleeping girl. Now, it was time to see what treasures the system shop held for their future. On this godforsaken island, they were stuck in the dark ages with zero technology. Their current production level was dangerously primitive and severely low. This book appeared to be a master guide for tool manufacturing. He hit download, feeling a sharp throb in his temples as the data flooded his mind. The knowledge within was pure gold. If he mastered these crafts, surviving a year on this island would be a total walk in the park. A shimmering system window appeared once more, confirming that the host had successfully completed the item exchange. For the first time ever, he'd unlocked a free lucky draw. Feeling a surge of hope, he prayed to the heavens to hit the ultimate grand prize. Fortune smiled upon him. He'd pulled the leopard talent. This legendary skill usually cost a staggering 10,000 points in the system shop. This was a massive jackpot. But just as he tried to activate his new power, the system blocked him. How infuriatingly cruel. He'd have to save this ace for later. By the time Deep Lamb awoke the next morning, he'd already prepared a delicious breakfast of grilled fish. He didn't forget to outline his plan, mentioning he had some urgent business to attend to before heading out alone. "Don't come to the riverbank while I'm gone," he warned. Thinking she needed privacy, he jokingly reminded her to bury any evidence to keep the camp clean. Deep Lamb's face turned a deep shade of crimson. "I only wanted to take a bath, you idiot," she screamed, mortified by his gross suggestion. Meanwhile, he ventured into the brush to forage for supplies. After walking only a short distance, he stumbled upon a cluster of wild mushrooms. Lady Luck was definitely on his side today. With the system's guidance, he never had to worry about accidentally eating a lethal or poisonous fungus. The resources near the camp were surprisingly abundant, including many types of fruit. Unfortunately, most of them were completely unknown to his basic encyclopedia. His botanical knowledge was failing him. He couldn't tell if they were edible. Suddenly, a wild rabbit darted across his path like a gray blur. At 70 kilometers per hour, chasing it was futile. He hurled his stone axe with all his might and sprinted forward in a desperate burst of speed. Despite his efforts, the prey escaped, forcing him to head back empty-handed. But suddenly, a panicked scream from Deep Lamb pierced the air. He rushed to her side only to see a serpent-like shadow gliding through the water. Without hesitation, Tan Thien dove in and seized it by the throat. It wasn't a snake, but a massive eel. Only then did he realize she was completely exposed, earning him an immediate scolding for being a pervert. He'd saved her, but at what cost to his reputation? Still, an eel was a rare delicacy, and Tan Thien wasn't about to let it slip away. Eels love burrowing into the riverbanks, moist mud to make nests. If he looked closely, he could find their hidden dens, which usually have two distinct openings, with one entrance above and one below. He moved to block the lower exit, effectively sealing the eel's only hope for a quick escape. But catching eels is a dangerous game. Never stick your hand in blindly. The riverbank is home to far more than just slippery fish. A variety of dangerous creatures lurk within those murky holes. You must be careful, because those burrows also hide aggressive and sharp-clawed crabs. The river teems with hidden dangers, especially venomous water snakes. They steal burrows since they lack the skill to dig their own. These snakes are notorious squatters, usurping homes with similar shapes. Their favorite targets, the cozy nests of unsuspecting eels. Now, I will use a simple grass rope to probe the depths. I must distinguish between an eel, a snake, or something worse. Only eels are lured by the grass. A water snake would have lunged and struck with lethal intent by now. Feeling a sudden tug, Tan Thien hauled the rope. Success! 3 massive eels, far more than they could consume in one sitting. To preserve the bounty, Tan Thien prepared a smoking rack. This eel meat must be cured to last for the next 3 days. A 4-hour smoke should suffice. Task complete. He hurried to the riverbank to inspect his primitive fish traps. Constraints of size meant his yield was limited to only 3 fish per haul. A meager catch of 6 fish was insufficient. However, with the eel secured, he could stockpile 10 small fish for future needs. By managing their resources, he and Deeblam could finally banish the looming specter of starvation. For the next 3 days, spring brings relentless rains, yet their current shelter offers zero protection against the coming downpour. They would be left shivering and soaked. He must utilize this 3-day food buffer to fortify their camp immediately. That night, they feasted on a nutritious banquet of grilled eels. Every bite was a burst of much-needed energy. He masterfully used wild raspberries to elevate the dish. Smoky aroma and tart sweetness collided, dancing across their grateful palates. The succulent eel, meat perfectly captured and locked in the vibrant raspberry essence. Each bite unleashed a symphony of sweet and sour flavors. It was a culinary masterpiece in the heart of the wild. 2 days of grueling labor transformed their shelter into a spacious two-seated tent. This new fortress was vastly superior and fully rainproof. The dual walls acted as a shield against the wind, providing a closed sanctuary and a vital sense of security. With their supplies exhausted, the hunt was on. He needed to track down wild game to sustain their survival. His target, wild rabbits. Unable to outrun them, he spent the entire morning tracking their hidden warren until he struck gold. The strategy was simple. Seal the auxiliary exits and smoke them out. The prey would have no choice but to emerge. He blocked 3 of the 5 openings. Using one for smoke, he funneled the panicked rabbits toward the final exit. Choking smoke filled the tunnels. Desperate for air, the rabbits bolted straight into his waiting hands. An easy harvest. Mid-celebration, a larger shadow blurred past. One massive rabbit managed to evade his grasp and flee. Usually solitary, he found a breeding pair instead. Deep inside, 3 tiny, trembling kits huddled in the dark. Mercy? Not in this world. When survival is on the line, compassion is a luxury that leads to a grave. Tanthin claimed the entire family, his laughter echoing through the trees. A truly legendary haul for a lucky day. Back at camp, Deeblam had finished the ropes. She cradled a kit, her heart melting. They are so adorable, ... How could we eat them? But cuteness provides no calories. Besides, wild rabbit meat is a delicacy they cannot afford to ignore. Deeblam's resolve did a complete 180-degree turn. They are too small. Let them grow fat first. Bigger means tastier. He stood there, speechless. Truly, women are the most unpredictable enigmas on this planet. He took the largest rabbit to the water to begin the grim work. Wild game carries a powerful, pungent musk. Proper butchery requires complete drainage of blood. The fur, unlike domestic breeds, was coarse, tough, and difficult to remove. It felt rough to the touch, yet it was a resource. That night, the gamey scent lingered heavily over the fire. Despite his careful preparation, the meat remained stubborn and tough. Nearby, Deeblam, beamed tomorrow, was the 7th day. A week in the wild. She clung to the hope that a rescue team would appear on the horizon. Soon, he chose not to shatter her illusions. Bored and full, Tanthin turned his attention to mastering the ancient hand-drill fire. His guide detailed 5 primitive methods. Crafting a bow and spindle, he began the rhythmic friction against a dry log. Smoke finally curled into the air. With a gentle breath on the tinder, a flame blossomed. Success, at last. No longer reliant on plastic, they had conquered fire. Morning arrived, the fateful 7th day of their ordeal. In her naive hope, she prepared to release the kits. She believed their rescue was imminent, and mercy was warranted. He convinced her otherwise. They are hardy. Let them stay until they can break free themselves. He calmed her worries. They trekked to the shore, eyes scanning the sea. Only the sound of waves greeted their desperate vigil. As shadows lengthened, he gathered wood for a signal fire. Deeblam's hope began to crumble into devastating despair. No rescue, no salvation. They were alone. Will we die here? She sobbed. Never, Tanthin vowed. Please, tell me it isn't true. Driven by despair, she spiraled until a sharp slap forced her back to reality. Only then did the crushing truth sink in. The rescue team was never coming. They were truly abandoned. He pulled her into a gentle embrace. You still have me, don't you? But come morning, a stinging revenge slap from the Lin woke him instantly. He had only struck her to break her hysteria. Now, he was being punished for his noble intentions. They shifted focus to the sea, waiting for the tide to pull back. But the ocean wasn't ready to yield its secrets. Nature followed its own rhythm. On the 2nd day, the low tide would arrive 48 minutes later than before. 6 days had passed since they washed up here. To survive, they had to wait another 4 to 8 hours for the water to recede. At this rate, the sea wouldn't reveal its treasures until well after the midday sun had peaked. Returning to camp that afternoon, they found the rabbits still caged. He immediately set to work, reinforcing their makeshift prison. Nearby, the Lin prepared a feast from their morning catch. This meager supply of seafood would only sustain them for 2 more days. The tide's ebb was limited to the afternoon hours. It was a golden window they had to exploit for every scrap of food. But scavenging the shoreline was a desperate gamble. To truly survive, he needed to find a more reliable source of nourishment. Exhaustion finally claimed him that night. With dark circles under his eyes like a panda, he collapsed into a deep sleep. He woke to the morning light in a blink. The Lin had let him sleep through the night without calling for a shift change. She had stood watch alone, her eyes weary and dark. "Go rest," he urged. "I'll take over the search for resources." While waiting for the tide, he ventured back into the wilderness. He hoped for a miracle, but the dense forest offered nothing but silence. Slumping against a tree root, frustration mounted. 2 hours of searching, and the island still refused to provide for him. He found only a few unidentifiable wild berries. Judging by the sun's position, it was 9 a.m. Then, a breakthrough appeared. A massive bamboo forest loomed ahead. Qin Tian didn't hesitate. He swung his stone axe, eager to claim this precious resource. In the wild, bamboo is the ultimate versatile material. For construction, it was a game. His technical knowledge was finally becoming a reality. No longer just theory, he had the materials. But this bamboo was tough, vibrating with every strike of his crude axe. Each impact robbed 30% of his power. The recoil rattled his bones. It was a long 2-hour trek back to camp. Cutting took hours, and the midday heat was rising. He bound the stalks into a heavy bundle and began the journey back. The Lin greeted him with grilled fish, or was it charcoal? Her excited face made it clear. This was her very first attempt. He couldn't bear to break her heart. Risking his life, he forced down the charred remains. It wasn't completely terrible, at first, but when the Lin took a bite, she gagged. It was bitter and acrid. Yet in this wasteland, wasting food was a sin. They suffered through the meal together. That night, he split the bamboo into fine strips to craft a professional fish trap. Their plastic trap was pitifully small. This new design would be massive, capable of catching an entire school of fish. The Lin jumped in to help, handling the smaller tasks with ease. She was no longer the passive girl she used to be. Her newfound proactivity was inspiring. Soon, the trap was complete, and the system chimed in his mind. 500 points earned. It was a bit ugly for a first attempt, but for his first cage, this functional shape was a huge success. Tomorrow's mission: more bamboo. With nothing else to do, the Lin insisted on joining him to help with the heavy lifting. 2 hours of hiking brought them back. Her job was to forage for bamboo shoots while they worked through the afternoon. They had to leave before dusk to avoid getting lost. The Lin quickly filled her bundles with fresh, tender shoots. Suddenly, a low grunt shattered the silence. She turned to find a herd of wild boars closing in. She had to warn Qin Tian immediately. This forest, once a resource goldmine, had become a death. She sprinted back to his side, recognizing the danger. Qin Tian grabbed her hand, and they bolted for safety. Wild boars were aggressive and territorial monsters. They needed to escape the bamboo forest, and they needed to do it now. A massive boar blocked their path. Where did they come from? Suddenly, a horde erupted from a nearby cave, surrounding them. Qin Tian signaled for the Lin to stay silent. "Walk softly," he whispered. "Do not make a sound." But it was too late. A scarred alpha boar spotted them and charged with terrifying, blinding speed. They were being closed in on. In 2 minutes, they'd be He needed a desperate plan, and he needed it now. The Lin's strength failed her, refusing to be a burden that got him killed. She shoved his hand away to let him escape. He was stunned by her sacrifice. "This isn't some drama," he barked. He turned to face the charging beasts. He let out a blood-curdling roar, remembering an old hunter's wisdom about boars. He stood his ground. To his shock, it worked. He hurled his stone axe with lethal intent. The cowards scattered instantly. They're gone for now. But the threat remains. No time for idle chatter. I need that axe back before heading to camp. That scarred beast hasn't moved an inch. Its old leg wound has reopened from the chase. Blood loss has grounded the monster. A cornered, lone boar is a vessel of pure, unbridled rage. Desperation makes them suicidal and deadly. My axe strikes barely dented its hide. I have no choice. I must lure this demon away. To buy deep lamb time, I'll trigger the system, awakening the leopard's grace. Speed surged through my veins. My limits have been shattered. The boar's pursuit became a joke. But this power comes at a cost. My stamina is plummeting. Even with a 24-hour buff, my body can only endure 3 more minutes. I've gained a massive lead. Surely, that beast has lost my trail by now. A low growl echoed right behind me. Damn my luck. Climbing won't save me this time. The monster tracked my scent like a predator. It wasn't exhausted. It was laying a trap for me. It can't climb, but it has raw power. The trunk groaned under its massive weight. It's trying to uproot my only sanctuary. I have 30 minutes before the tree snaps. I've recovered just enough strength. Tanthin braced himself against the violent tremors. Waiting for the fall is suicide. I'll strike while it's blinded by fury. My stone axe throbbed with anticipation. This beast is a relentless nightmare. Only the leopard's grace kept me alive. The scent of its own blood has turned it into a mindless killing machine. I'll strike during its next charge. Its neck will be wide open. A leap from the heavens will decide our fates. One strike to the scar. Tanthine's eyes burned with lethal resolve. My rest is over. The final showdown begins now. My stamina has surged past the halfway mark. When this tree collapses, I'll use my talent to vanish like a ghost. Suddenly, the monster halted. Blood loss has finally drained its life force. A dark, ambitious thought crossed Tanthine's mind. 100 kilograms of pure muscle. If I slay this beast, my camp will feast for an entire month. It's staggering, barely clinging to life. This is my chance to end it. Hey, overgrown bacon, he roared, leaping into the fray. The beast charged with a thunderous roar, but Tanthine's reflexes were supernatural. He danced around the strike with poetic precision. The boar slammed into the trunk with a bone-shattering thud. Stunned and vulnerable, Tanthine's blade found its mark, delivering a final, lethal judgment. I thought it was over, but the monster fought back. A desperate blow tossed me aside like a rat. After a brutal struggle, the king of the forest finally fell. 2,000 reward points acquired. This carcass is a massive haul. I must butcher it swiftly. Before the forest wakes up, the eye and scent of blood will draw. Darkness is closing in fast. My time has run out. I'll stash the kill and pray it stays hidden. But these predators have noses, like demons. Can I truly hide this feast? I buried the prize under thick foliage. Tomorrow, I return. Meanwhile, back at camp. Deep Lamb was desperately working. She was lighting a signal fire to save him. But Tanthine emerged from the shadows, cleaned of blood and carrying fresh fish. A silent hero returns. Relief washed over her as she embraced him tightly. But as the wet clothes came off, the atmosphere grew thick with tension. Survival had stripped away her former Her eyes searched his body for injuries. Are you hurt? Her voice trembled with worry. Just a scratch. Don't fuss. He smirked. They shared a meal by the flickering flames. The island was cold, but tonight, they were safe. You've grown up, haven't you? He teased. No longer just a fragile Are you still blushing? Dry your clothes by the fire, he commanded. The night air is a silent killer. We can't afford a fever now. He discarded his shirt without a second thought. Her eyes widened at his toned physique. Hey, you pervert, she shrieked in a flustered panic. He shared the tale of his 100-kilogram conquest. The massive prize was hidden deep in the emerald shadows. A feast awaited them. I'm heading back tomorrow for the meat. But the bamboo forest is a death trap. Worry clouded Deep Lamb's face. Survival means facing the storm, not hiding from it. If we run now, we'll never survive this island's wrath. I'll forge a bamboo bow. It's time we stopped being the prey and became the hunters. Get the fish from the stream, he instructed, and try not to turn them into charcoal this time. My talent clock is ticking down. The experience card expires at high noon. Then, I'll be human again. Every second counts in this race for meat. I arrived only to find scavengers already The forest never wastes a meal. Luckily, the prime cuts were still intact. Those 4 meaty legs are mine. In this fur, we'll make a perfect winter rug. I noticed a 10-centimeter gash on the beast, deep enough to expose the white bone. What kind of monster did this? A new predator is lurking in the shadows. I must be vigilant. These legs weigh dozens of kilos. This haul will sustain us for 30 days. I can't forget the sinews, the heart of my new beast. My mortal strength has its limits. I can't carry the whole beast alone. If the herd wasn't nearby, Deep Lamb would be my pack mule. He returned with a bounty of food. Meanwhile, Deep Lamb was busy crafting a needle from bone. His sudden appearance made her jump in surprise. Seeing her massive wild boar legs, she couldn't help but drool. Is this enough for an entire week? She asked excitedly. Are you a starving ghost? If we're careful, this could last a month. Curious, she asked what the marbled fat was for. He explained he would render it into lard, but first, they needed a pot. He began shaping a mud base for their future pottery. The clay at their camp was incredibly fine, making it the perfect material for high-quality ceramic crafting. Thanks to his tech encyclopedia, he knew exactly how to proceed. He rolled the clay into uniform strips, matching the perfect dimensions. Methodically, he coiled the strips layer by layer around the base. Finally, he smoothed the clay into its desired form. The result was ... a total disaster. He had created nothing but a messy pile. It seemed he was all talk and no skill. After a grueling effort, a bowl finally emerged. It wasn't the most beautiful piece, but it was definitely functional for their needs. Nearby, Deep Lamb had crafted her own bowls. He was stunned by her talent. Why did you make them look so perfect? He teased. As long as it works, it's fine. Why don't you try making a cooking pot while I fire these bowls? He suggested. Before firing, the clay had to be bone dry. If even a hint of moisture remained, the intense heat would cause it to shatter. Though they could use an open flame, an earth kill would yield far superior results for their survival gear. He fired the grate first to harden it. then built the chimneys atop the foundation. Slowly, the kiln's body took shape. Evening arrived before he could finish. As they ate, his mind was already racing with plans for their survival. The daily fish harvest from their traps was more than enough. They finally had a steady, sustainable food supply. With 10 pounds of dried meat stored, he felt like a king. Now, it was time to upgrade their primitive living conditions. Diplam carefully mended his torn clothes with expert skill. She was truly proving to be the perfect partner in this wild world. To solve the hygiene problem, he fashioned a brush from a branch and used crushed charcoal as a makeshift toothpaste. Charcoal powder is highly absorbent and cleans teeth effectively. However, since it isn't real toothpaste, using it every 2 days is best. The next day, the firing process began. It would take 5 long hours of intense heat to complete the transformation. For success, the pottery needed to cool overnight. Firing ceramics is a delicate art, far more complex than just using fire. During the process, temperature and timing must be monitored perfectly based on the kilns condition. Poor control leads to cracks and warping. He stayed to guard the fire while Diplam crafted backup pieces just in case. By noon, they retrieved their first 3 bowls. Only one survived. He knew he had to find a way to improve the success rate. Qin Tian began grinding shards into powder. In ceramic engineering, this vital additive is known as grog or Simply put, it involves crushing fired pottery back into a fine dust to strengthen the next batch of clay. Mixing it in increases the clay's bond and reduces shrinkage during firing, resulting in much sturdier finished products. The next batch saw 2 failures, but half survived. It seemed the addition of the grog was finally paying off. Based on this improved success rate, this final batch would provide them with all the daily essentials they needed. Under a gloomy sky, he rendered lard into oil. "We will use seashells to make soap," he told his confused companion. Seashells are primarily calcium carbonate. By heating them to extreme temperatures, he could obtain the necessary calcium oxide. Reacting with water creates calcium hydroxide. This then reacts with potassium carbonate from wood ash to produce a vital solution. This alkaline solution triggers a saponification reaction with the lard. By mixing them, they could finally produce genuine soap. A master of chemistry can truly survive anywhere. That afternoon, they rushed to the forest to gather banana leaves. A massive storm was brewing. Fortunately, they had renovated their hut just in time. Their new inventions were also a success. These achievements earned him 3,000 points. Combined with his previous balance, he now had 6,000 points in total. Diplam tested the soap, and the results were impressive. It lathered well, though it left her hair feeling a bit dry. He even gave her a handmade comb as a gift. It seemed romantic, until he handed her a wild boar skin to process. She had to scrape away the fattened meat scraps, while he focused on crafting a powerful bamboo bow. For hunting, a quality bow requires bamboo air-dried for 2 years. Such material has low moisture and won't easily deform over time. Lacking time, he used fire to dry the wood. For hunting boar, a soft bow is useless, only a hard bow will suffice. The materials at hand weren't perfect, and the elasticity was still lacking for a standard survival weapon. A simple bow wouldn't have enough power to ensure a lethal strike. He decided to engineer a complex compound bow instead. Success in the wild depends on the quality of one's tools. He poured his focus into perfecting the ultimate survival weapon. Crafting bow limbs was grueling work. I never expected shaping to pieces would waste an entire day. Progress was agonizingly slow. Suddenly, a massive bolt of lightning tore through the dark, stormy sky. He frantically packed the meat and tendons into jars. Sealing them was vital to protect the soap. They finished just before the Diplam wondered if he was secretly a genius survival expert. He credited survival shows for his skills. The system's existence remained a secret to avoid being called insane. Too much isolation breeds madness. That night, a strange noise jolted Tantine from his restless sleep. He urged her to help dismantle their camp defenses. They abandoned their shelter and fled into the rain. They hid high in a tree. Moments later, a terrified stampede of wild beasts thundered past them. Something was hunting them. His instincts were right. Fortunately, the rain washed away their human scent. Without the storm, they were prey. Suddenly, 2 massive boars collapsed. Were they dead or just faking? Remembering the tusked boar's trick, he hesitated. He could finish them, but the risk was too high. He couldn't gamble. What predator was powerful enough to leave such horrific, jagged wounds on these beasts? They looked lashed by a giant whip. High above, the icy rain began draining their vital body heat. Both were nearing their limit. Shivering in the freezing gale, he held her close to share warmth. A nameless terror lurked nearby. They remained silent as the grueling night of survival truly began. Freezing to death was certain. He threw his shoes down to lure the lingering boars away. He finally descended. Diplam slipped, falling onto him in a breathless, clumsy tangle of limbs. Talk about luck. The system awarded 3,000 points for surviving that brutal rainy, nightmare. Moving the hut early saved them. Without that foresight, the stampede would have crushed them into pulp. Their livestock was safe. However, the overnight deluge had caused the stream to swell dangerously high. Avoiding the riverbank was wise. Miraculously, his submerged fish trap survived the raging, turbulent flood. With wet clothes, banana leaves were their only cover. Deep Lamb still feared the boar's return. He reassured her. Their thunderous approach would give them more than enough time to escape safely. The night's chaos shattered her peace. Even with the pottery finished, the camp felt vulnerable. He was naive to think things would be easy. Nature's fury was a lesson he wouldn't forget. He needed a bow to strike back. Running away wasn't a permanent solution for this island's dangers. He reinforced bamboo for the frame. Next, he prepared pig tendons to create a powerful weapon. He wove the tendons into a resilient cord. Combined with rope, it made an elite bow. The balance was perfect. With the bow finished, he turned his focus to crafting lethal arrows. He used 6-path wood for shafts. He dried the rain-soaked branches over the crackling fire. Removing internal moisture was key. Shaven weight maximized the arrow's range and lethal flight speed. He considered 2 arrowhead designs. One involved fire hardening the tips into razor-sharp, primitive charcoal points. Alternatively, he could carve stone heads. Each method offered a unique advantage for survival hunting. He decided to test both. The system rewarded his craftsmanship with 2,000 bonus points. His total reached 11,000 points. It was finally time to purchase a legendary survival talent. He chose the Cheetah Hunter talent. Instantly, the system began a miraculous remodeling of his body. His muscles felt like steel. A surge of euphoric energy replaced his fatigue with raw power. He felt fully rejuvenated. The next day brought disaster. Their precious pottery lay shattered in the dirt. Wild pigs had trampled their work. Tantine and Deep Lamb had to restart the kill. Their skills had evolved. Between her molding and his heat control, their craft reached professional levels. They forged 10 perfect vessels. By day 3, Tantine began his high-stakes archery training. Despite his talent, his initial shots were wild. Yet, persistence soon made his aim terrifyingly sharp. He was ready. Any boar in his sights was already dead. Next, he sought more resources. He scoured the bamboo forest for shoots. The rain brought a bounty of fresh, vital food. Finding them on the outskirts was hard. Suddenly, a rustle jingle fowl. Fresh meat was finally closed. Tantine drew his bow to showcase his mark, but those chickens mocked him. Even for a pro, moving targets are a nightmare. Luckily, these birds seemed dazed. Even as arrows whistled past, they stayed put. Tantine felt motivated, but his aim, still, terrible. It was almost unbelievable he missed every single shot. Determined, Tantine crept closer, seeking a better vantage point for a lethal strike. Finally, the first chicken fell, followed quickly by the other 2. He'd burned through his arrows, but today's harvest was a feast. As he approached, the wild chickens didn't even flinch. As if daring him, that evening, a pot of savory stew filled the air. The aroma was intoxicating, the meat tender and rich. The flavor of the fertile land exploded on their palates, lingering for a long time. It was pure bliss, a literal brain melt of deliciousness. Yet, something was missing: a pinch of salt. Deep Lamb's eyes sparkled with desperate longing. She was a true gourmet at heart. Salt wasn't just luxury, it was the missing piece to transform their island meals into 5-star dining. More importantly, salt provides vital minerals for survival. Even a bear knows this. The solution? Evaporating the vast oceans, seawater for salt. The next morning, they headed to the shore with a massive pot. Their mission was simple: boil the sea until white gold remained. While Deep Lamb scouted for resources, Tantine began a genius projector science. To survive, they had to master time and organize tasks. This would help them manage their daily schedule better. First, he prepared a pile of mud, carving out a perfect square piece. Using precise diagonal lines, he located the exact center. There, he etched a circle on the mud slab for the time plate. This circle would serve as the sundial's main face. It's different from a normal clock face, which we usually see with 12 markings. But the time on it ranges from 0 to 24. He continued, dividing the sundial plate into 24 distinct parts for accuracy. Surprisingly, both sides of the sundial track time. The time standard on the back is the polar opposite of the main face. In summer, shadows fall above the plate, but in winter, they shift below. Thus, having 2 faces is essential for year-round tracking. At 12 o'clock noon, an object's shadow is the shortest. By aligning the shadow with the number 12, the clock is perfectly calibrated. Next, he adjusted the dial's angle. Tantine checked the salt, placing it under the blazing sun to let the remaining water vanish. Success! 1 pot of seawater yielded 200 grams of crude salt, enough to season their meals for about half a month. However, the taste was harsh, both bitter and salty, and filled with grit. It needed to be purified once more before it was edible. By sunset, they could process 2 more pots of seawater. aiming for a total harvest of 600 grams of raw salt. After refining, they'd have a full month's supply. This refining was essentially a thorough cleaning process for the salt crystals. The plan was simple: dissolve the salt in fresh water, filter the impurities, and boil it dry again for relatively clean salt. Using a bamboo tube, he layered cloth, charcoal, fine sand, and pebbles. He had created a makeshift, high-tier filtration system. The simple filter was finally complete. However, the process was agonizingly slow. Testing their patience with every single drop of brine, hours bled away, and they barely had enough to cover the pot's bottom. According to the sundial, it was already 6 in the evening, but with salt, the chicken stew became a legendary delicacy. Deep Lamb found the flavor absolutely irresistible, a true taste of heaven. They had survived 22 days on this island. A boat might be in their future, but now was not the time to leave. First, they needed to improve their lives. The duo decided it was time to upgrade their camp and make it truly safe. They had to move to a safer location. Their current spot was spacious, but the dense woods were filled with lurking wild beasts. For 4 days, Tian scouted until he found it, a wide clearing in the forest that led to a mysterious, large cave. He fired a test arrow inside. Silence. Creeping in, Tian found a graveyard of animal bones. A dangerous beast definitely lived here. Suddenly, a massive bear lunged at him. Only his leopard-like speed saved his life. He narrowly avoided a crushing blow from the beast. It was a national treasure panda. He tried bribing it with bamboo, but the beast only grew more enraged, launching a mad pursuit. He wasn't far, but the panda couldn't find him. This proved its sense of smell wasn't sharpened like those tracking wild tusked boars. Taking on a panda was pure madness. He was likely the first person in years to try, but he needed that cave. He loosed an arrow, but it didn't even leave a scratch. The beast's thick hide and fat were like armor against normal arrows. He switched to stone arrows. It drew blood, but the stones shattered against the hide, driving the panda into a murderous frenzy. Its paw slammed down with terrifying power. One hit would have shattered his spine. He had to retreat and plan his revenge. The enemy's strength was overwhelming. To pierce that iron-like hide, he needed a sharper weapon. He returned to camp to study its weaknesses. Perhaps poison arrows would be more effective. He began gathering toxic herbs, while Deep Than watched with worry, knowing the stakes. They needed that cave to survive the winter. Tian meticulously sharpened his stone arrows, his eyes burning with cold, fierce resolve. The panda's roar echoed in his mind. Tomorrow's battle would be a desperate struggle. He checked his gear, prepared for any situation. Everything was set for the dawn hunt. Tian closed his eyes, gathering his strength for the ultimate revenge match with Deep. Over dinner, Tian devised a desperate plan to slay the beast, melting his buckle into iron arrowheads. He could forge 2 at most. If these precious shots missed their mark, all would be lost. Iron requires 1,500 degrees to melt, yet simple charcoal only reaches 700 degrees Celsius. Melting iron seemed impossible. So Tian began constructing a bellows to pump oxygen into the clay furnace. By forcing air inside, he could push the heat toward 1,500 degrees. He chose a fan-style design. Think of it like a massive syringe, injecting life-giving air directly into the heart of the melting furnace. Traditional pumps were too exhausting. His fan-style bellows was a masterstroke of labor-saving, engineering, and efficiency. After a grueling morning of labor, the duo finally completed the preparations for their prehistoric forge. Pumping the air was a scorching, soul-crushing task. Amidst the sweltering heat, Deep Lamb nearly reached her limit. Success! The iron finally liquefied. Deep Lamb's hand-carved mold was a masterpiece of symmetry and deadly precision. Her craftsmanship was legendary. Together, they cooled and sharpened the tips until they possessed a lethal, soul-piercing edge. The craft was a triumph. The system rewarded his ingenuity with 500 points as he honed the steel. Could he truly conquer that forbidden cave? Everything rested on the sharpness of these 2 iron-tipped arrows. With more iron, he would have forged an army of arrows. Now, he stood ready for the ultimate challenge. The stage was set. Between his raw talent and careful preparation, victory was finally within his grasp. To deal with that monstrous panda, he browsed the system shop for a specialized new survival guide. Armed with 4,700 points, he sought the animal encyclopedia. Suddenly, a system notification flashed. The beast taming and wilderness encyclopedias were a set. The bundle deal cost only 4,500 points. Without hesitation, he purchased both. A surge of divine, mystical knowledge flooded directly into his mind. He instantly mastered secret techniques to counter a vast array of dangerous, prehistoric wildlife and apex predators. Though some pages seemed questionable, he wouldn't let that stop him. By dawn, he carried his iron-tipped taupe. It was time for a duel. He used wooden arrows to scout the cave, but the beast was gone. He lay in wait atop a tree. When the creature appeared, the system revealed its ancient Terrifying origins. A primal panda from the late Miocene era, 8 million years old, emerged from the humid forest shadows. This was the earliest ancestor, a carnivorous bear-like predator. To tame it, one must first change its diet. By substituting meat with bamboo and shoots, he could slowly suppress its savage, bloodthirsty nature. With months of rigorous training, this prehistoric terror could eventually be transformed into a loyal, legendary companion. Owning a prehistoric guardian was a tempting dream. First, he had to neutralize the beast's combat ability. He unleashed an iron arrow. Upon impact, he used a tether to retrieve the projectile for another shot. The wounded beast roared in fury. Tian activated his cheetah talent, using extreme speed to kite the predator. He fired while retreating, landing 6 punishing shots. He would spend the coming days slowly breaking the creature's spirit. No prehistoric beast could endure such relentless harassment. He continued his hit-and-run tactics with ruthless, tactical precision. On the 4th day, the beast vanished. Suddenly, it ambushed him from behind. He reacted instantly, firing his arrow, but the clever creature blocked. It was evolving, learning his patterns. His iron arrow shattered, forcing a tactical retreat. Back at camp, the stakes were clear. Only one iron arrow remained. If this failed, his journey was over. Fortune smiled as he spotted a blue poison dart frog, a tiny creature harboring a world of lethal toxins. These frogs accumulate paralysis-inducing toxins from their diet. Just one touch can freeze a victim's muscles forever. The poison attacks the respiratory system, bringing a swift death. Even a trace amount is an absolute death sentence. The Wilderness Encyclopedia detailed an ancient Native American method for creating these devastatingly powerful poison arrows. Such arrows could fell the mightiest giants. As he returned, a terrified Deep Lamb threw her arms around him. She feared the beast had claimed him. Together, they began preparing the toxin to finally subdue the prehistoric bear. Roasting the frog turned its skin black, releasing the deadly essence. Tian carefully coated his final arrowhead. He measured the dosage with grim focus. This poison would surely bring the weakened prehistoric predator to its knees. He aimed to tame, not kill. Too much poison meant death. He had to be precise to succeed. The final poison arrow was ready. Every detail was perfected for their last fate-deciding confrontation with the beast. With his tactical grass bundles prepared, Tian approached the bear's den. No one could have guessed the genius behind these simple items. He tossed the smoke bombs inside, forcing the beast out. A grueling chase ensued until the massive predator finally began to falter. Now for the real test, poison arrows. One struck home in its rump, though the primitive stone tip struggled to pierce deep. Surprisingly, a shallow wound was perfect to avoid a lethal overdose. Yet, the beast's relentless speed showed no signs of slowing down. According to theory, respiratory failure and muscle paralysis should have set in. Was the dosage too low for this titan? Perhaps the arrow was too blunt to deliver the toxins. As it charged, he fired his last shot. Suddenly, the panda collapsed. He observed cautiously. An hour passed before it stirred, completely immobilized. It took 2 full hours just for it to sit up. After 3 hours, it moved slightly. Perfect. The poison was precisely calibrated to paralyze, without being life-threatening to the beast. At dawn, he returned with a peace offering of fish and bamboo. He found the massive bear slumbering lazily at the cave. It was sprawled right at the entrance. Why expose your flank like that? You should have crawled deeper inside for safety. Are you tempting fate? He tossed a large fish as a bribe. But the beast remained still, locked in its stupor. The paralytic effect was still potent, or it would have attacked. Seeing the fish, the fat bear began to drool uncontrollably. It began devouring the feast greedily. He offered more fish, taking advantage of the creature's inability to move or resist his presence. He watched it eat, knowing trust was the ultimate goal. He had to win it over before the poison completely faded away. The aggression in its eyes softened. Truly, food is the way to its heart. He kept feeding it until the beast was calm. I was starving, too. Eating together was blissful. Satiated, it lounged unguarded on the grass. I named my new companion Hambi. Taming Hambi would take 60 days. That evening, Deep Lamb grew irritable. Her 28-day cycle had finally caught up to her. It was a few days late, she admitted. From tomorrow, I decided we would begin the arduous process of making our own paper. Paper originated in the Western Han era, but those early versions were far too coarse for any meaningful record-keeping or books. Only after C.I. Lun refined the technique did paper become practical. Historically, workers would soak plant fibers until they decomposed naturally. They would pound the rotted plants into pulp. To skip the long wait, I needed to utilize modern chemical technology for the pulp. The next morning, a pungent scent filled the air. Deep Lamb recoiled as I brought out the key ingredient. Modern methods use sodium hydroxide to separate resins from plants. This allows us to extract the pure cellulose needed for quality pulp. This chemical process ensures the paper remains strong and flexible. we won't have to worry about our writing being stiff or brittle. Urea from the urine, when aged and heated, yields ammonia. This was the first step in my primitive laboratory on the island. By heating shell powder, I obtained calcium oxide. A series of reactions finally produced the essential sodium hydroxide solution I required. I boiled the wild grass in the caustic solution for hours. Deep Lamb watched the bubbling cauldron with utter disbelief in her eyes. She wondered if paper could really come from such ingredients. I assured her that science can transform even the most wretched materials. Every step was vital for this survival upgrade. Soon, raw grass would become pulp, marking a new era of comfort in the wild. Success, the sodium hydroxide did its job. As the grass boiled, the impurities and lignin finally began to separate and dissolve. Carbohydrates dissolved in the chemical solution, leaving behind nothing but pure, snowy white cellulose for our paper making. After rinsing away impurities, I stirred the white sediment into pulp and spread it across the drying racks to set. If everything goes according to plan, the very first batch of paper will be finished by tomorrow evening. Ding! The system rewarded him with 1,000 points for his success. Deep Lamb could only look on in pure admiration. Paper on a deserted island? You're a genius. He just bluffed, crediting his vast reading habits for the miracle. 3 days later, he visited Hamby. The bear was lounging, waiting for its tribute. Its eyes sparkled the moment it smelled fish. After 3 days of fasting, it was ravenous. At this rate, full taming would be achieved in less than 2 months. 2 hours later, he headed to the riverbank. He needed to find wild ginger to brew some medicinal tea for the camp. Meanwhile, Deep Lamb was struggling with intense cramps. Usually, she would need heat packs and sweet red sugar eggs for relief. I offered her hot ginger tea instead. It worked wonders, and she soon felt the agonizing pain in her stomach finally fade. Half a month passed, and my bond with the panda deepened. Today, I brought fresh bamboo. Will you eat it or not? Glancing at my sharp blade, the bear wisely chose the bamboo. I felt a bit bad intimidating my chubby new subordinate. In less than 2 months, a fierce carnivore had been reduced to a bamboo-eating pet. It was an incredible transformation. The whole situation felt completely surreal. It was hard to believe how far we had come in such a short time. But even if Hamby eats bamboo, his nature remains. Suddenly, the system's notification appeared. The host has triggered a new event. After taming the beast's wild appetite, he claimed his legendary prize. The slave seal. This seal grants a soul link to purebred beasts, revealing their every hidden secret. With loyalty guaranteed. Tanthin branded the mystical mark onto Hamby's back. The system interface flashed. The poor panda was both starving and heavily wounded. Still hungry, he teased. Later, he proudly told his wife the taming was a success. At daybreak, he introduced Deep Lamb to the newest member of their survival pack. Nature remains wary. Hamby's wild eyes narrowed, glaring coldly at the strange woman. A bribe of fresh bamboo worked wonders. Food is truly the ultimate peace offering. Within a week, Hamby was gentle enough for Deep Lamb to ride its back. Their survival grind just got easier. The panda was now their loyal guardian. Hamby self-foraged as they moved their camp into the safety of the cave. Let's move, he shouted, hauling heavy pottery toward their new mountain sanctuary. Nostalgia hit hard, but 3,000 system reward points quickly eased the pain. Under the celestial canopy, they witnessed stars more brilliant than any city dream. Inside their new stone home, Deep Lamb suggested they share a warm bed. With Hamby guarding the entrance, Tanthin leaned in, his heart racing with intent. She blushed deeply as he teased her, though his heart was already hers. By day 2, they were back to work, digging mud for fresh ceramics. Their old stash was meek. They needed a new batch to survive the winter. Tanthin envisioned a true fortress, complete with a kitchen and secure storage. They planned to hollow out the stone, expanding their cave into a mountain mansion. Every hour of grueling labor was an investment in a much more luxurious future. The grind started now. Hardship today meant total comfort in the days to come. Day 3, Hamby helped gather bamboo, though it required a playful, firm smack. On the 4th day, the grand construction of their ultimate camp finally began. They fire-bent the bamboo, crafting a massive shelter over one intense, grueling week. The interior was peak luxury, featuring handmade furniture and a fully functional kitchen. He traded points for a plant encyclopedia before Deep Lamb discovered rare quartz crystals. Quartz. This was the legendary material needed to forge glass in the wild. Driven by curiosity, they headed upstream to hunt for even rarer, useful resources. They found soap pods for shampoo, but the tree was a fortress of thorns. Seeing her worry, Tanthin unleashed his leopard talent and climbed with ease. These branches were thick and sturdy, far safer than any slippery coconut tree. Steady now, he whispered, navigating the lethal spikes with predator-like grace. Secured by rope, he reached for the pods and spotted something truly miraculous. A massive hidden field of sugarcane was flourishing right before his very eyes. It looked almost cultivated, Deep Lamb reached out, but the leaves sliced her hand. Those leaves were sharper than razors. Careful. Nature doesn't play nice with royalty. He harvested a stalk deep purple, heavy, and dusted with sweet, white powder. The rind was iron tough, a crunchy challenge fit only for Henby's powerful jaws. It was overripe and tangy, but perfect for boiling into rich, brown sugar. These snow lotus seeds were a nutritional goldmine for their primitive survival diet. However, extracting the seeds from the pods was a grueling and meticulous test. They had to dry, crack, and peel each shell to find the milky white core. With aching fingers, he muttered, "This porridge better be worth all this struggle." Pure bliss in every bite. These seeds are incredibly smooth, a delicacy far beyond my wildest dreams. Meanwhile, the soapberries are soaking to prepare a special shampoo for Deep Lamb. The real work begins shortly after. Crushing sugarcane for its sweet nectar is a grueling task that consumes the entire morning. Every drop must be filtered before the boiling process starts. Suddenly, Deep Lamb returns with Hambai. She proudly displays a basket full of mushrooms, but a chill runs down his spine. Those are deadly toxins, not ingredients for dinner. Relief washes over him as the system identifies the edible ones. With practiced ease, he separates the poison from the prize. By the time he's finished, less than half a basket remains safe to eat. He sends her to gather peppermint leaves next. Tanthine's plan to craft toothpaste leaves her utterly confused. Yet, the magic of coconut oil and peppermint is about to create a survivalist's essential. The sugarcane juice simmers until it's thick and golden. In a separate pot, the alchemy continues. He carefully adds fresh ginger into the fragrant soapberry essence. Nature's healing power is at work. The ginger's heat stimulates the scalp to prevent hair loss and banish the itch. It's a formula designed to strengthen hair from the roots. Next comes the extraction of pure coconut oil. Peppermint leaves are laid out on a bamboo rack high above the boiling water. He employs the ancient art of water bath distillation. Steam rises, pulling the essence from the leaves. Pure peppermint oil begins to drip into the bottle. This precious liquid isn't just for cleaning, it's a potent medicinal oil for the journey ahead. While not as chemical heavy as modern oils, the results are undeniable. He blends the soapberry and coconut oils and waits for the mixture to solidify into a balm. By morning, it will be ready for use. 2 successful crafts in a single day. The system rewards his ingenuity with a massive 1,300 points. Deep in the night, the silence is shattered. An eerie, spectral laugh echoes through the shelter. He bolts upright, heart pounding, only to find Deep Lamb's mother muttering in her sleep. Her subconscious excitement for the shampoo manifested as a terrifying Just as he catches his breath, a torrential downpour begins to hammer the roof. Hambai is instantly on the defensive. The beast stares into the impenetrable darkness with predatory focus. Something is stalking through the rain toward their camp. A massive herd of wild boars emerges. They charge through the storm with savage intent. Hamby's instincts were right on the money. The hunt has arrived at their doorstep. The stampede is here. Hambai roars and lunges into the fray. With a single, devastating strike, the powerful beast floors one of the invaders instantly. But the storm has driven the boars into a frenzy. They disregard their own lives, throwing themselves at Hambai in a desperate, bloodthirsty attempt to overwhelm him. They aim to crush the bear with sheer numbers. In the blink of an eye, Hambai is completely surrounded by a wall of tusks and muscle. It's time for Tanthine to step in. He unleashes a volley of poison-tipped arrows to support his companion. Thankfully, the perlates and toxins begin to take hold. The quiver is running dangerously low. Only 4 arrows remain in his arsenal. He must aim for the vitals to make every single shot count against the horde. One by one, the boars collapse, their limbs frozen by the potent venom, but the cover is blown. One of the beasts has finally pinpointed his location. He makes a daring choice. He will lead the herd away from the camp to relieve the crushing pressure. Currently mounting against Hambai, moments later, he ignites his leopard talent. He becomes a phantom in the trees, using supernatural speed to lose the pursuit deep within the thick underbrush. The heavy rain masks his scent perfectly as he vanishes into the high branches. By the time he returns, Hambai has decimated the remaining boars, forcing a retreat. The beast is ready to hunt them to the end, but Tanthine steps in to stop the slaughter. A chase in this weather is a risk they cannot afford to take. That's more than enough for tonight. This unexpected battle has provided a mountain of meat. Their food worries have vanished in the wake of the storm. At first light, the processing begins. They must butcher the 4 massive carcasses before the jungle's heat turns. Their heart prize into rot. A hero deserves a reward. He heads out to find bamboo shoots for Hambai, while seeking vital nutrients for the team. They can't survive on meat alone. The forest edge is nearly picked clean. After an exhaustive search, he only manages to find a few meager shoots. This won't satisfy a beast like Hambai. For an animal of Hamby's size, this is barely a snack. He has no choice but to venture deeper into the shadows of the ancient forest. An unnatural silence falls over the jungle. Tian pauses as he discovers a massive trail, a wide path of crushed grass where something colossal has recently passed. Every survival instinct he possesses screams in warning. This feels exactly like a scene from a horror movie. I have to get out of here right now. A sudden sound echoes behind him. He spins around, and his heart nearly stops at the nightmare looming in the brush. An ancient apex predator that should be extinct. This 12-meter titan is a relic from 58 million years in the past. A ton of prehistoric muscle is lunging for him. He activates his leopard talon at full power, running for his life as the giant serpent gives chase. He frantically checks the beast taming manual for a weakness, but the titanoboa is too fast, and its stamina is legendary. It is a relentless killing machine. Outrunning a god of the jungle seems impossible. The serpent is gaining ground with every slither, but Tian isn't out of tricks just yet. He has one insane plan. The manual suggests attacking from the inside. Is this a guide or a suicide note? But with death closing in, it might be the only way to survive. He dives over a steep embankment to hide. Thanks to the terrain, he manages to break the monster's line of sight for a precious few seconds. The reprieve is the serpent finds him instantly. With a roar of desperation, he drives his knife deep into its massive side. The scales are like armor, resulting in only a scratch. In a moment of pure madness, he leaps onto its neck. The safest place to be is right where the monster can't bite. He clings to the scales for dear life. An hour passes in a terrifying blur as he remains perched on the back of the world's greatest predator. A group of boars distracts the titan, giving him the opening he needs to escape. He finally realizes the boar stampede was caused by this prehistoric nightmare. The clash is over in an instant. The wild boars are no match for the overwhelming power of the titanoboa. It's a slaughter, not a fight. He sprints until he's finally clear of its territory. But as the darkness of night falls, the jungle prepares to reveal even more terrifying secrets from the shadows. My current status is pathetic. If a beast finds me now, I'm dead meat. I need a hiding spot. Fast. I pull up the system, but it's a dead end. My points are too low to unlock a new talent. I'm praying for a miracle from the lucky spin. Even a trial card could save my life. It's time to gamble. A beast? Slave seal. Are you kidding me? Why did I pull this garbage item now of all times? The boars have a scent. Tian tries his desperate shouting tactic one more time to scare them off. It's useless. His stamina is gone, and his legs are like lead. His only hope? Diving into a pile of filth. Boars are nearly blind at night, relying entirely on scent. This stench is the only thing masking my presence. Silence is survival. If I don't make a sound, I might live. They're actually settling down to sleep, right here. He has to rot in that stench. The heat from the decomposing waste is becoming a suffocating, literal help. It feels like being buried under a heavy quilt in midsummer. If this keeps up, I'll be drowned in sweat. Sensation is fading from my limbs. I have to stay conscious. If I pass out here, I'm a dead man. Suddenly, voices pierce the dark. It's Hambai and Deep Lamb. They're horrified to find him buried in the muck. With Hambai's savage ferocity, the boars finally scatter. He's finally escaped that stinking nightmare. Suddenly, his strength vanishes. He collapses straight into Deep Lamb's arms. Talk about a dramatic, messy encounter. Man, the smell is intense. They need to move before predators catch the scent. They hitch a ride on Hambai to retreat. Deep Lamb doesn't care about the grime. She holds him tight. She's truly fallen for him. At dawn, they finally stir. They head to the river to scrub off the filth. Hambai plays the perfect, obedient bodyguard, acting as a wall between them. Look at that goofy face. Back at camp, Deep Lamb crashes instantly. But Tian's work isn't done. He heads to the kitchen. Exhaustion is heavy, but hunger is heavier. Then he sees that the pigs he caught have been mutilated. Did a beast infiltrate the camp? No. Deep Lamb had carved them herself. She needed the fat for a torch to find him. Can you imagine her expression then? Desperately gutting a pig just to light the way for his rescue. She's a warrior at heart. As he sits, agony flares in his knee. The price of overusing his heavenly talent. His energy is spent. He needs time to mend. After a deep, restorative slumber, they finally share a meal. They need to refuel for the trials ahead. He mentions the titanoboa, and the blood drains from her face. Will it hunt us for dessert? If that monster wanted us, it would have struck long ago. Its tracks were deep in the bamboo thicket. As long as we stick to the edge, we should be safe. For now, he gives Deep Lamb his heartfelt thanks. She beams with pride. After all, a wife protecting her husband is only natural. He's grateful to have her by his side. Their bond deepens with every struggle. But the forest remains a deadly labyrinth. They'll face the darkness together. He eyes his injury with a sigh. This recovery is taking far longer than expected. Rest is the only medicine. Tian finally wakes at noon, but he's still bone-tired and drained. His knee is a mess, swollen, angry, and red. But there's no time to dwell on the pain. Those 4 boar carcasses won't last. They have to start smoking the meat before the rot sets in. Processing for massive boars is a monumental task. The workload is absolutely staggering for just 2 people. Even with Deep Lamb's help, a single boar takes hours. Tanthin ensures every single scrap is put to use. The perishables go for Storgen meats for dinner. The remaining bones are tossed into a massive cauldron. He's boiling them down to create bone glue. It takes 3 grueling days to finish the entire process. That afternoon, Deep Lamb's scream echoes through the camp. Their precious smoked meat. It's been stolen. That rack was too heavy to just vanish. There are no drag marks, no signs of a struggle on the earth. Hambai didn't even bark. A ground predator would never have slipped past his keen, beastly senses. Fear sets in. They begin a high-stakes night watch to protect their remaining life-saving stores. This is 6 months of survival over 300 kilos of meat. Not to mention the valuable hides and sinew. They could make clothes from these, but first, they have to unmask this phantom thief. He stays on guard until the first light of dawn. Then, a shadow blurs across the sun. A golden eagle, a legendary predator of the skies. A 3-foot killing machine with a massive 6-foot wingspan. It strikes from the heavens at 200 miles per hour. One dive, and those talons crush the prey's skull instantly. This apex predator strikes with lethal precision. It's terrifying. Hunt and prowess makes it a legendary guardian for the nomads. Once its target is marked, it swoops from the heavens. Its prize, a stash of delicious smoked meat. The mysterious thief was finally revealed. With the meat perfectly cured, it was time to seal the jars. Security was paramount now. Tanthin moved with calculated patience, intending to bend this beast to his will. He engineered a primitive capture mechanism. A tension-loaded branch and a lure were all he needed. A certain fire cultist once trapped a deer this way. If it worked for a beast, an eagle stands no chance. The trial run was a disaster. The trap refused to yield before snapping back with violent force. It struck him squarely on the chin. He quickly summoned Hambai to test it. Fearing another painful blow, the bear obliterated the trap instantly. That greedy, lazy creature is nothing but a mountain of trouble. Unlike this slothful bear, your narrator works tirelessly for you. Do not forget to show some love. After refining the mechanism, he swapped the bait for a fresh fish. Suddenly, the golden monarch descended. As it snatched the lure, the rope coiled like a serpent. Yet, the young master remained motionless. An eagle's talons are like daggers. One wrong move could cost him an eye before he even blinks. He would let the beast exhaust its rage. The eagle froze in terror as Hambai loomed over it. Recalling ancient legends, he mocked the bird. You are silly eagle now. Tell me, where's the dragon maiden? Even the giant eagle was speechless. This human has clearly watched too many Wuxia dramas lately. Pure delusion. He attempted to manifest a slave seal, but the system flashed a crimson warning. Domesticity must come before the seal. Taming such a majestic creature requires a battle of wills. The strategy was simple. Psychological warfare through sleep deprivation. By noon, the eagle's spirit began to fracture. The Lin's gaze was cold and unwavering. I am watching your every move, so abandon all hope of flight. Day 2 began with Qin Tian on guard. He even fashioned a bamboo toothbrush during the long vigil. By dawn on day 3, the eagle's eyes were sunken. Every time it drifted off, Hambai's roar shattered its peace. Meanwhile, the Lin crafted a warm pigskin coat. On the 4th night, the bear took over the watch. The creature's frustration was palpable. Should he just turn this stubborn bird into tonight's dinner? On the 5th day, the eagle finally bowed. The slave seal locked, rewarding him 5,000 points. Through their new bond, he felt the eagle's maternal distress. Its precious chicks were in grave danger. This was a golden opportunity. He crafted a heavy leather gauntlet, preparing for his new aerial scout. The Lin tried to bond with the bird, but it snapped fiercely. Why would it only obey him? Qin Tian joked about his natural charisma. To compensate, the Lin used prime fish to win its heart. With their bond solidified, the party prepared to traverse the treacherous mountain pass. Through the eagle's eyes, he saw its chick trapped in a narrow ravine after a tragic fall. The mother eagle had tried everything to save her young, but her efforts were in vain. Her massive wingspan was a curse in that tight crevice. If the rains came, the chick would drown. They had to move fast. That night, they camped beneath a tree, surrounding themselves with It was a rudimentary repellent for the island's venomous insects, but better than nothing at all. Suddenly, a cold shiver woke him. Beside him, Hambai was already bristling with primal aggression. A pack of wild wolves was closing in. These predators hunt with the coordination of an army. Without Hambai acting as their heavy tank, they would have been torn to shreds in minutes. Unfortunately, the eagle was blind in the darkness. They were on their own against the pack. He ordered the Lin to light the torches. He hurled fire at the beasts, while Hambai charged. The wolves scattered in fear, but their cunning eyes remained fixed on them from the shadows. At dawn, they reached a cliff. Leaving the others behind, he began the perilous solo ascent. One slip would mean certain death. Miraculously, he conquered the summit and stood amidst the clouds. From his vantage point, a dormant volcano loomed in the distance, promising rare minerals and hidden treasures. The chick was trapped on a sheer precipice. Without professional gear, saving it would be impossible. Descending to rescue the chick was a suicide mission. Even with professional gear, Qin Tian couldn't risk such a lethal gamble. But he had a secret weapon. Activating his beast, taming seal, he established a direct mental link with the majestic eagle. A simple command: tell the chick to grip the rope. With a sharp tug, he pulled the little life from the abyss. Success! Tucking the bird into his clothes, he descended the treacherous peak. But at the base, Deep Lamb and Hambai were gone. They were likely foraging for survival. He took a brief moment to recover before the duo finally emerged from the brush. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted as a storm brewed. Then, a streak of fire cut through the sky. A plane was crashing. They raced toward the smoke, but a wall of debris blocked their path. Qin Tian stopped to check their dwindling rations. Return to camp or risk a detour. Every scrap of food was now a high-stakes gamble between life and death. The trek back was no guarantee. Even if they reached the impact zone, the jungle could swallow that wreckage whole. If the search dragged on, they'd be stranded in the wild with nothing but empty bellies and regret. The decision was made: he'd go solo. As they parted, Deep Lamb gave the tiny eagle a name shout, a much cuter name than his usual failures. Before leaving, she handed him a secret weapon: sticky pine resin. It was the perfect fuel to pierce the coming darkness with fire. His solo journey began. Pushing his special talent to the limit, he charged north, relentless as the midday sun. Time was of the essence. High above, his eagle scouted the terrain while he tore through the thick undergrowth. Suddenly, the ground turned soft. The air grew heavy with moisture, though not a single drop of rain had fallen. Ghost, through the eagle's eyes, he saw the world in high definition. A shared vision of the path ahead. A massive, treacherous swamp lay in wait. The long way around was frustrating, but his life was worth the miles. But the mire was endless. Every turn led back to the muck, and the swarms of mosquitoes were a living nightmare. One bite could lead to a lethal infection. Spending the night in this hellhole was simply not an option. The emerald waters were a cocktail of ancient, deadly bacteria. A single open wound would be a death sentence. Every step felt like wading through poison. Qin Tian gritted his teeth, pushing through the kneed filth. The water deepened, and shadows moved beneath the surface. Snakes! Luckily, Sandul struck from above before they could bite. Finally, on solid ground door. So, he thought, activating his talent to speed up, he plummeted into a hidden mud pit. His body was being swallowed whole. Don't panic, he hissed. This wasn't just mud. It was deadly quicksand. The more he fought, the deeper it pulled. In this vertical grave, blind struggling is just an invitation to the abyss. He shifted his weight, lying flat to defy the pull of the earth. Every second was a battle against gravity. Sandul, get me branches. Using his rope, he lashed the wood together into a makeshift platform. By spreading the pressure, he turned the liquid trap into solid ground. With a final, agonizing heave, he broke free. Gasping for air, he stared back at the death trap. That was too close. Then, a spark of inspiration hit him. He recalled a legendary technique from the classics. If he built a primitive sled, he could glide across the mire. It was pure physics, just like skiing on snow. Suddenly, his speed tripled as he skimmed over the swamp. The crash site was dead ahead. Is anyone alive? Just then, a stunning blonde pilot emerged from the wreckage. She had been swallowed by a monstrous storm and spit out onto this forgotten island. A miracle she survived. Physically, she was fine, but her plane was ruined. Sandul let out a sharp cry. He'd spotted her. He sprinted toward the smoke, but the cockpit was empty. Then, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the trees. A massive crocodile was hunting her. With no other choice, they dove back into the shattered fuselage for cover. In her panic, the blonde beauty crashed right into his arms. Talk about an intense first meeting. Dusting off his English, he managed a quick exchange. But outside, the predators were closing in. They were trapped. He let fly his stone arrows, but they just bounced off the beast's armored hide like toothpicks. He aimed for the eyes of a tiny target. He missed, and now the crocodiles were absolutely livid. At this rate, the metal hole wouldn't last 15 minutes. They were sitting ducks in a tin can. System, open shop. With 12,000 points, he purchased the legendary Sagittarius blessing. She reached for a lighter, but he stopped her. He had a better plan. She handed it over. Trust in him. Power surged as the talent took hold. He began coating his arrows in resin. It was time for fireworks. He sparked his lighter, transforming the arrow tip into a blazing projectile. It was lethal alone, but fire changed the game entirely. As he aimed, a targeting reticle flickered into existence like a video game. This was the true power of his Sagittarius talent. A power gauge materialized, tracking his draw strength. It showed exactly how much force was needed for the perfect killing shot. The wind speed bar acted like a literal cheat code. With a sharp thud, his arrow pierced the crocodile's eye perfectly. 6 predators were instantly blinded by his arrows. Terrified, the pack retreated, finally, leaving the pair in peace. For the moment, he soon learned the girl's name was Jessica. She had a phone, but this cursed place offered 0 network signal for calls. His basic English made communication a total nightmare. That night, they huddled in the plane's wreckage and lit a lonely torch. Luckily, she shared some canned food to fill his stomach. To his horror, the production date was from over a century ago. Jessica ate happily, since canned beef doesn't spoil as exhausted from the crash and the crocodile chase. She desperately needed rest. Wild beasts couldn't breach this sturdy cabin. For tonight, the cockpit would be their only sanctuary in this primitive nightmare. By sunrise, Jessica was already busy preparing a meal. Her bag was filled with strange tools and supplies for cooking pork soup. Using her own rations, she cooked a feast. After finishing the soup, both Tanthin and Jessica felt their strength return. Jessica had endless questions, but Tanthin could only grasp a few words. The language barrier remained an impenetrable wall between them. To bridge the gap, he drew a map showing the way. He gestured and explained the camp and the survivors waiting there. She watched intently as he marked the different paths. He hoped they'd reach safety together while sharing stories of his home. Tanthin believed Deep Lamb could communicate with Jessica better. Without hesitation, he invited the mysterious girl to join their camp. Seeking safety in numbers, Jessica agreed. She panicked at the giant eagle until realizing it was actually his loyal companion. They set off toward the camp, but a suffocating fog engulfed them. Even the giant eagle's keen eyes couldn't pierce the abyss. They pushed forward blindly until Jessica suddenly collapsed. Even he felt his physical strength being drained by the mysterious mist. This thick fog was toxic. He noticed that staying low to the ground seemed to stabilize Jessica's fading conditions slightly. His strength returned as he crouched. He used Jessica's lighter to test the air. A sudden blast cleared the choking fog. It was a methane pocket, a silent and deadly trap. Since methane is lighter than air, the gas concentrated above them. Because they stayed low, the effects were dampened. He had to wake Jessica and escape before the dangerous gas returned. He scavenged her bag and discovered a battery. Using a bamboo tube and clean water, he began crafting a makeshift lifeline. He extracted pencil lead and a metal spoon, connecting them to the battery. Bandages served as an insulator for the device. The spoon acted as the negative pole, forming a circuit. He submerged the components into the water-filled bamboo tube. Electricity surged, sparking electrolysis to produce oxygen. Slowly, the life-giving gas brought Jessica back to her senses. Confused, she listened as he explained the methane threat. They needed to move while the air was still clear enough. Jessica stared in awe at his makeshift invention. His genius had saved them. Swiftly, they prepared to leave this step. The giant eagle stood ready as their guide. He supported Jessica, warning her that the surrounding area was filled with gas. With only one oxygen source, they had to take turns breathing. But the battery was dying, and time was running out. It was a race against time to cross the swamp. Fortunately, they managed to reach clear air just as the power failed. Meanwhile, back at the camp, Deep Lamb was busy dealing with some pesky food thieves. Those weasels were brazenly stealing Zhao Bai's fish. She was worried. 3 days had passed without any sign of his return. Suddenly, the eagle returned. Tanthin was back, but he brought a beautiful stranger, leaving Deep Lamb completely stunned. He introduced the blonde pilot as Jessica, a survivor of the crash. Then, he jokingly claimed she was his second wife. To his absolute shock, Jessica snapped back in perfect Chinese. "Why didn't you say so earlier? You never asked me. You kept speaking English, so I had no idea," he yelled. All that effort to communicate had been for nothing. That night, once the shock wore off, they stayed up late, listening to Jessica's incredible story. She revealed she was an ancient scholar and biologist. Her loft was dedicated to researching the world's most mysterious creatures. Her vast travels were why she mastered so many languages. Stranded here, she wasn't afraid, she was actually captivated. For her, this island was a paradise. It was home to primitive, extinct species that she could never find elsewhere. This was the discovery of a lifetime. But everyone was shocked when she claimed to be from the year 19. He searched her face for any sign of a lie, but found none. Jessica was telling the absolute, terrifying truth. Her plane was an antique, and the canned food labels were brand new for her era. She was truly a woman out of time. From 1927 to 2020, Jessica was utterly speechless, lost in time and space. Deep Lamb stood guard while the others slept. A sudden question about their romance left them both blushing hard. "No moves yet. Then Tanthin sleeps with me tonight. Your bravery at the swamp, it never left my mind. Your brilliance and strength. I have fallen for you." Be my boyfriend. Suddenly, a murderous chill crawled up his spine. He refused for honor's sake, resigning himself to a lonely sleeping bag. Jessica stripped without hesitation. This feels so much better. Deep Lamb's eyes blazed with fury. Caught staring, he was dead meat. A beautiful morning, but Deep Lamb's bitter rage ruined the view. An empty bowl revealed the truth. Deep Lamb was clearly jealous. Why not both of us? Jessica teased her about sharing a husband. Let us share him, sister. Deep Lamb fled, her face crimson red. I will be the first wife. Tian stood there, completely stunned. With the night over, the trio gathered to plan their survival. Phase 1. Secure the island. They had to map every corner. A massive wooden barricade. To keep the wild boars at bay, farming livestock for the coming winter. Survival demanded a steady food source. Winter was coming. They desperately needed to find hidden resources. Iron and copper were essential. Next phase, build a ship to escape. Jessica shared her supplies. New clothes and sharp tools changed everything. Every blade was a blessing. Their survival chances just skyrocketed. To the bamboo forest, Sajia watched from above for danger. The Titan python was gone. Time to venture deeper into the woods. Back at the dung pile, ... He wasn't playing, he was hunting treasure. Rare niter soil found in the waste. The key ingredient for their salvation. Extracting potassium nitrate. Soon, they would have explosive power. The girls crafted a massive clay tub. By noon, their bath was ready. Refining begins. Mixing ash and soil in a perfect ratio. Plant ashes replaced the They carefully covered the precious earth. Hot water dissolved the nitrate. Impurities were finally stripped away. A grueling task, drop by drop. Their hard work finally paid off. Tomorrow, the nitrate will be pure. Then, black powder will be ours. Jessica saw them as future travelers. She hungered for stories of tomorrow. The initial wash was murky, full of impurities that needed purging, strained through cloth, and boiled. The refinement process was intense, stirring constantly over the flames. One mistake could ruin everything. As the liquid thickened, solid crystals began to form at last. Salt and chloride emerged first, leaving the pure nitrate behind. Filtered while still scorching hot, only the best material remained. As it cooled, the nitrate exploded. Pure crystals materialized in abundance. Final filtration complete. The ingredients for destruction were ready. 75% nitrate, plus sulfur and charcoal. The perfect recipe for chaos. 15 to 223, ... Boom. Their first success was legendary. No longer will they tremble before wild beasts. Their next move? Developing explosives. They are crude, but under these conditions, the simplest designs are the deadliest. The recipe is surprisingly basic. All they need are dried bamboo stalks, some clay, and a reliable fuse. Once the materials are prepped, the bamboo is divided into 3 chambers. In goes the clay, the fuse, and finally, the black gunpowder. Each layer is sealed with clay and packed with overwhelming force. For the finishing touch, a larger bamboo shell wraps it all together. And just like that, a crude bomb is born. His secret? Let's just say he was quite the troublemaker in his younger days. Back then, his crew even blew up a cesspool for a laugh. But now, it's time for a real test. Boom. A massive shockwave rocked the era total success. Even the system chimed in with a reward of 5,000 points. Still, the impact felt lacking. The culprit was definitely the gunpowder. Black powder just can't compare to the raw fury of high explosives, like hex. The energy released upon ignition in this primitive state is far too low. Because of these limitations, its killing power is capped. This bamboo bomb won't slay giants, but it'll certainly send them running in terror. That night, Tian and the crew crafted 3 more bombs to bolster their arsenal. This time, he doubled the gunpowder charge. Sadly, Jessica's sulfur stash was running low, limiting their production to just 3 units. A few days later, the group shifted their focus to fortifying the camp's defenses. They hoped to kill fire bricks for walls, but the reality was harsh. Even with multiple kilns, they were only churning out a handful of bricks a day. Faced with the impossible, Then came June, bringing with it a heat wave that felt like a literal furnace. He'd kill for some ice water right now. Using potassium nitrate, he began the freezing process, topping it off with freshly picked wild strawberries. Behold, his Arctic strawberry ice cream. Just then, the Lynn and Jessica returned with wild grapes. Ladies, I've got a surprise for you. One bite of that strawberry shaved ice and their senses were electrified. On a desolate island, this was nothing short of a miracle. Jessica looked at him like he was some ancient sorcerer. Meanwhile, his wife was too busy devouring her treat to care about his explanations. She is such a little glutton. To perfect the freezing process, Qin Tian and the Lin crafted ceramic pots nested like matryoshka. Using pig fat as a thermal barrier, they achieved ultimate heat resistance. The cooling efficiency plummeted the temperature instantly. Ice production was finally stable. Over in the corner, Jessica was busy mashing grapes. her heart set on crafting a fine vintage wine. The method was pure. Wash, crush, and mix with sugar at a 10:3 ratio. Finally, seal it tight and let time do the work. But there's a thin line between wine and vinegar. It all comes down to the quality of the seal. They left 2 jars partially open, inviting the acetic acid to work its magic. Meanwhile, Qin Tian began designing a fan to combat the heat. Using a long bamboo axle as the spine, one end held the blades, while the other featured a shield to harness the steam's power. Driven by boiling water, the steam engine groaned to life, spinning the fan. Suddenly, July arrived, the absolute peak of summer's wrath. The sun's fury was relentless, but their inventions provided a sanctuary of cool air. That fan was a literal lifesaver for everyone. The ice kept their spirits from breaking. Step by step, through sweat and ingenuity, their survival camp was evolving every day. New dangers lurked, but with Qin Tian's genius, they were ready for anything. The heat was at its absolute zenith. Dean poured his soul into refining the steam engine, adding a cooling condenser to the loop. Now, the steam didn't just turn the blades, it cycled back into water through the condenser, returning to the boiler for endless use. They even started making wild berry pie. Hambai watched with sparkling eyes, waiting for a taste. These popsicles and the fan were divine weapons against the sweltering heat. For a moment, the sun felt conquered. Then, the sky broke. A torrential downpour began, and the perimeter fence was still unfinished. If the wild boars stampeded now, they were in trouble. But Thien wasn't worried. His new talents were awakening. With his allies supporting him, he felt invincible. Their defenses were no longer a joke. Right on cue, the boar herd charged. He and Jessica leaped onto the fence to hold the line. Arrows flew with supernatural precision, dropping a beast in a single heartbeat. Then, Hambai and the eagle dove into the fierce fray. The herd buckled under the pressure. Seeing an opening, Deep Lamb unleashed a bomb. The explosion sent the creatures into a panicked frenzy. But he couldn't let them escape, so you don't just walk into their camp and leave. Besides, wild boar meat is a legendary delicacy. It was a total massacre. Victory was theirs. Still, wild boars grow slowly, far different from the domestic pigs back home. Domestic pigs fatten up in a year or two, but overhunting these wild ones would collapse the entire population. If they aren't careful, they'll run out of food. But with today's haul, they were set. They wouldn't have to worry for 6 months. With the larder full, the team pushed themselves to the limit. They scrambled to finish the barricade before the true rainy season turned the world to mud. For the next 2 weeks, the rain never stopped, but neither did they. Day and night, they worked through the exhaustion without a single rest. Finally, the wall was complete. Just in time for the storms, they were safe at last, and a wave of pure relief washed over the weary survivors. They reinforced the camp's perimeter before the heavy rains hit. The boar threat was finally over. Rainy season arrived on the island. Trapped inside, Tan Thien shared his homemade grape wine with his wives. A pungent aroma filled the air upon opening. He reassured them the white film was just carbon bubbles. After filtration, the wine was ready at far too sour. He explained that fresh brews always taste sharp. Aging would mellow the flavor. Next, he prepared to distill the alcohol using its lower boiling point. At 78 degrees, the alcohol vaporized, traveling through bamboo tubes to separate from the wine. It cooled into liquid nearby. Meanwhile, he mixed grape vinegar and baking soda in a precise ratio. With red sugar and water added to his ice bucket, Tan Thien created a refreshing, cold beverage. It tasted remarkably like cola. A month later, their camp was complete with storage and a bathroom. The organized functional areas were a success. The system rewarded him with 2,000 points for the upgrade. Autumn arrived. Two-Batch could now fly and obey Deep Lamb's simple commands. Growth was evident. Tan Thien planned to explore the plains. He took Hambai and Sadu toward the crash site. Jessica and Deep Lamb scouted the perimeter. Suddenly, the island's weather shifted with seasonal intensity. Nights grew cold as autumn winds pierced the camp. They prepared warm layers for the dropping temperatures. With the harvest nearly done, a sense of pride filled them. But the night wind brought a chill. The wind howled outside, sheltered in Jessica's sleeping bag. I felt safe and warm within the tent. Hambai seemed sluggish from sulfur fumes. Exploring the volcano's base, Tan Thien found rich sulfur, this meant one thing: the ability to manufacture even more powerful, explosive bombs for their defense. Surrounded by unknown resources, he used reward points to purchase the Wilderness Mineral Encyclopedia. Knowledge was power. He identified his find as silica, the essential raw material for crafting glass. Moving his base to the mountain slope, he scoured the crater daily for precious minerals. He located pyrite and copper ores, though the quantities remained frustratingly small for his needs. Only a few pieces were found. The crater floor was too hard, shattering his pickaxe during excavation. Forced to retreat with his meager haul, Tan Thien continued exploring the vast, resource-rich plains. Compared to the lush forest, the plains felt monotonous. a stark contrast in the island's ecosystem. He passed the deadly swamp again. Even if forced, he vowed to take the long way around. Yet, the swamp held secrets. He noticed the mysterious white mist shifted with the environment's gas. Mist density correlated with methane levels. Timing his entry during thin mist would ensure his safety. The swamp's potential was huge. High-quality crocodile skin for gear was a temptation he couldn't ignore. Suddenly, Shadow detected two-legged intruders. Tan Thien rushed in, Ham by hot on his heels. Ham by stayed behind due to size. Activating his talent, Tan Thien hit 110 kilometers. 5,000 meters vanished in 3 minutes. Before him, brutes were hunting a desperate young girl. She was agile, but her weapons lacked lethal. The enemy closed in, surrounding her completely. He couldn't just watch, using homemade smoke bombs and arrows. He struck to break the siege. The plan was simple. Unleash a smokescreen to blind the enemies and secure their narrow escape. These brutes were massive and battle-hardened. Taking them head-on would be nothing short of a suicide mission. Even with 2 talents, a direct victory was a dream. Survival meant keeping their distance. Their only hope was reaching Ham by... Once they cleared the swamp, the tables would turn. Blood loss slowed her down. Within 30 seconds, the 4 hulking men would be upon them. He offered a bag ride, but she insisted on staying to fight so he could escape. He hoisted her up regardless. Being a hero meant finishing the job, even as his speed dropped. Suddenly, Sadu warned of a massive presence. A legendary Titan Obwa blocked their path ahead. This swamp was the beast's true domain. Encountering it now was the pinnacle of misfortune. It ignored the muscular thugs behind them. Instead, the giant serpent fixed its gaze on Tan Thien. Talk about rotten luck. The Titanoboa's speed was overwhelming. Running was no longer an option. Relying on my instincts, I leaped onto the beast's massive back. Seizing the opening, the girl drove her blade deep into its spine. The python shrieked in agony, flinging the girl aside with violent force. Before it could devour her, I activated my agility talent to snatch her from death's door. Enraged, the titan charged toward us with murderous intent, but its momentum was shattered as my explosive bullet found its mark. While the beast was stunned, we vanished into the dense forest. We retreated 300 meters, but the furious python was already hot on our trail. We dove into the thickets to hide our presence. I knew these predators relied on thermal heat signatures rather than sight to track their prey. The python's heat-sensing pits are located right between its eyes and nose. It was a deadly biological radar we had to bypass. Fortunately, my explosive shot had turned its face into a bloody mess. With its senses scrambled and its brain dazed, it could no longer track us effectively. Finding us in this state would be impossible for the beast. From above, Shadow circled the sky, ready to draw the snake's attention away from our position. With Shadow dominating the skies, we finally had the upper hand. This was the perfect opportunity to see what this mysterious girl was truly capable of. Leaving the treacherous swamp behind, a familiar figure appeared before us. It was Hammy, our giant companion, waiting patiently at the forest edge. Thinking Hammy was a wild monster, the girl jumped in front of me to protect her savior. Only after seeing it was a pet did she finally lower her guard. I gestured for her to climb onto Hammy's back for the journey. To my surprise, she simply crouched down, mimicking the creature's posture exactly. Stunned by her behavior, I had no choice but to lift her onto the beast myself. Her hand was gashed, and the wound on her thigh looked dangerously deep. We stopped by the road to stem the bleeding. When she struggled to start a fire, I pulled out a lighter, leaving her frozen in absolute disbelief. With grim determination, she used a glowing ember to cauterize her own wound. It was a primitive, agonizing method, but the only way to survive. Though she endured the pain, I quickly broke out the first aid kit to properly dress her injuries. Despite her wild nature, she allowed me to help. She even lifted her skirt to show me the thigh wound without a hint of hesitation. Despite the sensitive area, I remained focused on saving her life. As darkness fell, I tried to move her into the warm tent. Suddenly, she bolted awake and swung a weapon at me, but I dodged her strike with ease. Recognizing me as her rescuer, she immediately bowed in deep apology. Inside the tent, her stomach suddenly let out a thunderous growl. Flushed with embarrassment, she tried to punch her stomach to silence the noise. I couldn't help but smile, handing her some dried pork to eat. Her excessive politeness made me feel quite awkward. I told her I was just an ordinary man and urged her to rest inside the sleeping bag. She stubbornly refused the bag, relying instead on her thick fur coat for warmth. At dawn, her sudden, piercing screams jolted me awake. It turned out she was trying to pick a fight with Shadow. I stopped her just in time, realizing that communicating with her would be a monumental task. Gathering information from her was proving even harder than it was with Jessica. The language barrier was an impenetrable wall between us. Admitting defeat for now, we returned to camp. My wives were frantic with worry, though Jessica didn't miss the chance to tease me about my new companion. She joked that I'd end up in prison for kidnapping a local. Surprisingly, Jessica's vast knowledge allowed her to actually bridge the communication gap. We learned her name is Nick, a member of the Lada tribe. Deep Lamb recalled reading about her people and the world's hidden history. The Lada tribe consists of 50 people living near a hidden oasis. In that harsh desert, they never had to worry about food or water. They sustained themselves by cultivating lush apple orchards. I realized this unique tribe could be a vital ally in this strange world. For now, keeping Nick safe was our priority. However, a foreign army was already moving through the region toward her homeland. British troops were stationed nearby during the Great War. They often visited the Lada tribe just to trade for their refreshing apples. In 1939, the soldiers arrived to find the village deserted. Food was still on the tables, but every single tribesperson had vanished into thin air. After speaking with Nick, the truth emerged. They had been mysteriously transported to this island 3 years ago. They weren't the only ones. A year ago, a group 3 times their size arrived by boat, bringing nothing but violence to their peaceful shores. These invaders launched an unprovoked massacre on the tribe. Despite their brave resistance, Nick's people were brutally overwhelmed. Most were taken as prisoners of war, while a lucky few vanished into the island's shadows. We decided to join forces with Nick's people for revenge. We planned to use explosives against the raiders. Nick warned us of a seasonal white mist that would vanish for only 2 days. The swamp's mist was thickening again, blocking the enemy's path. They wouldn't be able to cross into our territory until the winter chill arrived. We have 3 months to prepare for the coming conflict. According to Jessica, Nick now worships me as a powerful shaman. Because of my modern tools, I accepted the role of a mystic leader to maintain her loyalty. She bowed before me repeatedly, leaving the rest of the group speechless. Jessica suggested we all learn Arabic to speak with the tribe. I could barely master my own language, let alone a complex ancient tongue. Fortunately, the system provided a world language encyclopedia. With her skills, Jessica took charge of Nick's education and well-being. To celebrate our new alliance, Deep Lamb prepared a magnificent feast. The table was overflowing with the finest dishes our camp could offer. This grand meal was a reward for Xiaobai's hard work. Our loyal pet had spent the entire day hunting deep within the dangerous woods. After hours of tracking, everyone finally sat down to enjoy the prize. Xiaobai had successfully brought down a massive wild turkey for us all. Her culinary skills were legendary, the perfect picture of a devoted wife. Nick feasted like royalty. After years of fleeing bandits, a full stomach felt like a distant dream for the girl. Tears of pure relief finally began to fall uncontrollably. Night fell, and the cave was cramped. Tantine moved outside, leaving the warmth of the others. Despite their kindness, Nick clutched her stone blade in the corner, a heart-wrenching sight of trauma. On the second day, the intensive Arabic language training began for the survival team. He planned a seafaring escape, urging an injured Nick to prioritize rest over hard labor. Determined to prove herself, Nick felled a massive tree with a few shocking, powerful swings. Her monstrous strength was terrifying, her crude stone axe far outperforming his professional iron tools. With Nick's help, they gathered wood and fired the furnace to forge the boat's iron soul. Science met survival, as 10,000-degree heat purged sulfur from the volcanic pyrite. A pungent stench filled the air as the iron transformed into a glowing river of molten metal. However, the yield was low, with iron content barely reaching 40% of the Ignoring industry norms, Tantine and Nick poured the molten iron into Deep Lamb's waiting molds. Once cooled, the first iron nails were born. Next, they turned their focus to preserving fruit. To survive the winter, they needed glass jars crafted from silica stone to preserve their harvest. The hunt for silica led them to the riverbank, where the stream held high-quality mineral vein. They found massive crystal-clear stones, the ultimate high-grade silica for their crafting needs. Suddenly, Deep Lamb struck gold. Finding treasure in a small stream was pure, unexpected luck. Their luck peaked when Nick brought over a massive, glittering nugget that left everyone in shock. She led them to the source. A literal treasure hoard of gold lay hidden right there. It was worth billions. Then, Jessica cried out she had discovered a sparkling diamond. Priceless treasures on a deserted island. They were suddenly rich beyond their wildest dreams. Yet, gold is useless in the wild. They stayed focused on gathering the essential silica stones. They packed the silicon, the gems holding on to the hope of one day reaching civilization. Glassmaking is a delicate science. Silica is an amorphous material with no fixed melting point. At 800 degrees, the stone softens, becoming a pliable substance ready for transformation. It becomes a flowing liquid, a process far simpler than the grueling task of smelting iron. Deep Lamb and Jessica prepared the blowpipes, ready to breathe life into the molten liquid. They blew into the glass-like bubbles, using precision tools to shape their future containers. To the little one, it looked like magic. He constantly rotated the pipe to ensure perfection. Centrifugal force was the key. One wrong move, or a change in speed, and the glass fails. His first attempt failed, but Deep Lamb's natural talent for handicraft quickly produced a perfect bottle. Using a diamond knife to cut the glass, their final products looked like professional artisan works. Using his system points, he unlocked the language encyclopedia. Finally, understanding the little girl's every word, he feigned a slow learning curve while Jessica Todd and Deep Lamb mastered her glassmaking techniques. Deep Lamb was a true genius, mastering Arabic conversation and glassmaking at an incredible pace. As the jars were finished, Tan Thien processed saltpeter into potassium nitrate for powerful explosives. On this island, bombs were the ultimate insurance, the most lethal weapons for their survival and defense. Resources were scarce, leaving them with only 3 precious bottles of potassium nitrate for the journey. With the departure date nearing, Tan Thien focused on his final invention, a long-range telescope. He began crafting the casting molds, focusing on creating perfect glass plates for the optical device. He built a specialized pottery wheel to ensure the precision required for such a delicate machine. Tan Thien personally managed every detail as the preparation phase for their escape reached its end. Pride filled him as he looked at his inventions. Finally, their great sea adventure was beginning. The Lin harnessed the lathe's rotational force, carving a flawless, polished funnel. Using leaves as makeshift sandpaper, he meticulously smoothed every surface imperfection. He curved the sharp tip perfectly, then cast the molten glass into the mold. Fusing 2 glass plates into a convex lens, his masterpiece was finally complete. The tool achieved 8-fold magnification, leaving Nick absolutely breathless with joy. Dubbed the Divine Eye, they crafted solar lenses to preserve their precious fuel. They vowed to use solar fire for daily needs, saving the lighter for emergencies. Next came the Catamaran project. Following the ancient rocker's wisdom, 2 wooden hulls took shape, reinforced by stacked triangular frames. Beams locked the hulls together, forming a deck with raft-like simplicity. No complex seals were needed. A fast leak-proof marvel of engineering. This dual-hull design offered superior stability and a low center of gravity. It braved massive waves without capsizing while Jessica took the helm. The 4 worked tirelessly as Qin Tian added a protective cabin. After a week of labor, their vessel conquered the sea trial. Dawn would mark their departure as they finalized their tactical plan. While the others guarded the rations, the ocean air felt revived. Escaping the receding tide, the crew remained resilient against seas. Beneath the calm surface lay deadly currents, making these waters treacherous. Her expertise eased his mind, but chaotic winds slowed their progress. They dropped 4 wooden anchors, securing the ship for the night. Jessica took the sole night watch, a grueling burden for her. Only her maritime instincts could save them should a crisis arise. He woke after a brief rest, joining her to share the silence. She spoke of the legendary megalodon before a beautiful dawn broke. They chased the steady morning winds until the sun began sinking. The distant shore finally appeared, yet the tribe's location remained hidden. As complications mounted, they rested before the final hunt. Dense, towering greenery surrounded them as Nick sensed something familiar. The path home was open, yet an eerie unease gripped her. The empty sentry posts signaled danger, prompting her to investigate alone. Outmatched and desperate to save their chief, they were stunned by Nick's return. He calmed their fears, explaining the mysterious disappearances of the searchers. She detailed her survival, proving she had escaped unharmed. She had crossed the forbidden zone and met the great messenger himself. They scoffed at the legend, calling her claims nothing but delusions. Suddenly, a massive eagle descended, plunging the entire tribe into terror. Qin Tian emerged with effortless grace. So, who wished to meet me? This human was the divine representative chosen by the shamanic god. He sparked a flame from his hand, leaving them utterly speechless. Hailed as a god, they knelt until a giant challenged his power. Nick intervened as a duel loomed. He is the chief's only hope. The warrior's suspicion flared, but Qin Tian remained unshakably calm. Backed by the eagles, Screech's aura of authority was absolute. To save the chief, he would now unleash his true power. The great priest's power is legendary. He has tamed colossal beasts, slain the great bird, and crushed the giant serpent single-handedly. His strength could easily overwhelm us all, yet the fool refused to yield. You must move like a hunting leopard to strike. Your movements will be a blur beyond his perception. Tan Thien declared, I only need the strength of 2 fingers to break him. Rise, and I shall accept your challenge. But despite his burning bitterness, the warrior remained pinned to the earth, utterly helpless. He was powerless to change his fate. No matter how he struggled, he couldn't budge. The crowd watched in stunned, open-mouthed silence. Keda, our tribe's fiercest warrior, was subdued by just 2 fingers. Truly, the great priest's might is beyond all human comprehension. If he is the great priest, our people are saved. He will surely bring our kin home. But how did he do it? It wasn't brute force, but a clever trick of physics. He exploited the very mechanics of the human physical structure to win. To rise from a sitting position, 2 distinct forces are required. One must lean forward before pushing upward to find balance. By pressing a finger to his forehead, his center of gravity stayed pinned back, his weight remained stuck, making it impossible to rise. Brute strength is useless against such logic. Seeing this, the elder in the tribe finally placed their absolute faith in him. The tribe even mistook Jessica for a divine priestess. She stood in shock as they knelt, awed by his fluent, ancient tongue. She kept her silence, merely asking, "How did you do that?" Meanwhile, Tian addressed the tribe with a commanding, trust-building speech. He spoke to win their hearts completely. As darkness fell, the elder led them to rest within the priest god's sacred temple. Meanwhile, Nick regaled the others with tales of Tian's godlike feats. To them, he had become a living legend today. Scanning the tribe, I saw barely 20 souls. Of those, less than 10 including myself were capable of standing on a battlefield. Even armed, we stood no chance against such foes. Suddenly, a little girl approached, clutching a meager offering of food. Little Abby begged him to save her people. But as she spoke, her stomach growled a heartbreaking sound of true, deep hunger. He shared his dried meat with her. The poor child hadn't eaten in days. The tribe's food stores were completely bone dry. Through Abby, Tian learned their plight. They had fled in such haste that most of their provisions were left behind. Though the warriors hunted daily, the meager catch couldn't sustain them. Hunger was a shadow looming over every single tent. As winter's chill settled, the forests grew silent. The animals had vanished, leaving the hunters with empty hands and heavy hearts. Lately, the warriors returned with nothing. When the elder arrived, he tried to shoo Abby away, fearing she would disturb him. But Tian insisted she stay. Though the elder brought a feast, he ordered it shared among the starving people instead. Knowing their desperation, he produced pounds of dried meat. "Give this to the elders and the children first," he commanded. Tears welled in the elder's eyes as he bowed. In the Leda tribe, shamans were myths until this miracle appeared before them. They were caught between hope and fear. Had the shaman god truly heard their desperate prayers and sent a savior? The elder trembled with gratitude. The Leda, a shaman, was a legend made flesh, standing right before their very eyes. A mix of joy and dread filled their hearts. Could this divine being truly be the final answer to their salvation? Yet, anxiety lingered. What would happen next? What would this mysterious shaman demand of them in return for his help? How should they serve this divine messenger? One wrong move might ignite the shaman god's terrifying and legendary wrath. Elder Hammer now bore the weight of leadership. Every command he issued would decide the very fate of his entire tribe. When dawn broke, he found the sanctuary deserted. The silence of the morning felt heavy and unsettling to his soul. The tribe had already ventured out to only Nick and the elder remained to serve him a final morning meal. Learning the enemy camp was a day's march away, Tian set off. Jessica stayed behind to manage the tribe's affairs. After a grueling day's trek, they reached the enemy's stronghold. The scent of wood smoke and cold steel filled the air. The camp swarmed with brawny warriors wearing horned helms. These weren't ordinary men, they were the dreaded, bloodthirsty Vikings. Falling into pirate hands meant only two things: a swift death on the spot or a life of brutal slavery. Negotiation was impossible with such monsters. Deep in the camp, Nick's kin were already being worked like beasts of burden. Suddenly, his eagle familiar shrieked a warning. As they hit, a group approached, speaking in a harsh, guttural Norwegian tongue. Thanks to his language encyclopedia, their secret words were clear. He understood every treacherous detail of their dark conversation. They were hunting for the spring of life. Even better, they possessed a sea map, the key to his journey home. With that map, he could finally return to the mainland. Their scouting mission was over. It was time to strike. Meanwhile, Qatar's hunting party stumbled into a pirate ambush. He shouted for his men to retreat and survive at all costs. If they fell, the tribe would surely starve. But just as hope faded, Nick charged into the fray, blade flashing. To protect the boy, Qatar's warriors stood their ground. Stone against stela, desperate struggle against iron blades. While Tian moved the wounded to safety, he linked minds with Nick through Shadu to unleash their full power. The tribe's elite warriors crushed the opposition. But a lone pirate sounded the horn, summoning a tidal wave of reinforcements. They vanished into a hidden sanctuary before nightfall. Within those mysterious walls, the cold grip of fear finally began to loosen. Tian shared his precious rations. Surprisingly, Aruba held no grudge for being left behind a true warrior's heart. Qatar's icy exterior masked a soul of pure loyalty. Though their paths differed, their lives belonged to the tribe. Dawn broke as they reached the village. Jessica's eyes sparked with curiosity at the mention of the legendary Viking marauders. The infamous pirates of history were finally within reach. Legend says, a pirate once found the spring of life and achieved immortality. A daring plan took shape: lure the wolves from their den, then strike the camp to rescue the captives. We take our people and the food. The next day, Tian sought out Lexi, the village's master of the forge. Her hands shaped every blade and tool in the village. She was the living heartbeat of the tribe's craftsmanship. Respect must be paid for such dedication. At the forge, Lexi greeted him with a sharp nod and a knowing smile. "Need repairs?" she asked. Tantine showed her the shattered stone. "These won't bite through iron," she noted quietly. "I'll reinforce them with ancient techniques. It would take time, but these blades would soon taste blood." She was the iron backbone of their defense. As they planned for war, Tantine felt a surge of gratitude for her. "Honestly, this girl is incredibly robust. Her stonecrafting skills are so exquisite, they far surpassed my own." I commissioned specialized pipes and test tubes from her before asking the elder for a pile of discarded bones. The old man actually thought I was going to use them to curse the pirates. Talk about a wild misunderstanding. I just told him I was forging a divine tool. Luckily, they had plenty of raw materials lying around: bone meal, carbon, and silicoty ingredients for white phosphorus. I'm about to reinvent the match and bring fire to this world. Moments later, my companion and I scouted the surrounding area for more vital resources. We found the wounded man hunting instead of resting. He was staking out a serpent's den, waiting for his next meal. Then I saw a taro leaves. I urged him to lead me to the source immediately. This plant was a miracle of nature. Taro, a perennial wonder crop, a staple food that could change the fate of this entire tribe. Packed with nutrients and easy to digest, its starch particles are 10 times finer than a potato. High digestibility, medicinal value, and even alcohol production. This plant was a literal goldmine of survival. But the man stopped us. "Eat that, and your mouth will burn and swell," he warned. I laughed and told him cooking turns it into a delicacy. Hearing that, he dove into the harvest, like a man possessed. He didn't realize only the roots are edible, not the leaves. Regardless, we began unearthing our prize. Without bags, we used our clothes as makeshift sacks. The villagers watched us return, doubting if these roots were even food. I prepared a massive cauldron to boil them. 10 minutes, that's all it would take to change their lives. Hamio's trio stared at the pot as if trying to see through time itself. Finally, the steam signaled they were ready. I gave the first piece to the elder. It was scorching hot, yet they devoured it, whole skin and all. "At least peel it first," I joked, but the elder was already moved to tears by the heavenly taste. Starvation was no longer their shadow. They knelt in gratitude before heading out to gather the rest. 3 massive crates were soon bubbling away. The realization that food was finally abundant filled the air with joy. They hadn't known a full belly in years. They asked for a speech, so I just roared, "Don't forget to like for the bear." Actually, forget that, let's eat. Later, Abu gifted me a necklace, finally acknowledging me as the divine messenger. Despite his rough exterior, he couldn't deny my achievements. I had finally earned the warrior's respect. Then, I gathered everyone for a serious announcement. "This taro field won't last forever," I warned. "Our consumption is high, and our resources are limited. Worse, the Viking pirates are closing in, shrinking our world with every passing hour. Survival means leaving. We must build ships and return to the other side of the peninsula." Under Hamio's lead, the tribe stayed hidden as we began construction in the seaside forest. The tools I requested were finished in record time. Our grand escape was finally taking shape. These intricate patterns are breathtaking. Her mastery has truly eclipsed even Deep Lamb's legendary skill. Next, he headed to the shore to gather shells. He processed them into calcium oxide before adding water. This created calcium hydroxide. Meanwhile, Jessica managed the fires, boiling seawater into a thick brine. This allowed them to extract magnesium chloride hexahydrate, also known as halogen salt. With both materials prepared, they combined the calcium hydroxide. Seawater holds many secrets, including magnesium chloride. When mixed with calcium hydroxide, a powerful reaction begins. A white magnesium hydroxide precipitate begins to form. Tantine used cloth filters to trap the magnesium. Jessica grabbed batteries from her pack to create a saturated brine. Through electrolysis, the ions began to dance. Hydroxide and sodium combined into sodium hydroxide. Hydrogen and chlorine transformed into volatile gases. Tantine carefully channeled them through a specialized pipe. He ignited the gases to produce hydrogen chloride. This was dissolved in water to create potent hydrochloric acid. He then submerged the magnesium into the acid. A fierce chemical reaction birthed pure magnesium chloride. In the final stage, he evaporated the water with intense heat. Finally, they held solid magnesium chloride. The solid was melted down into a liquid state. He then began the electrolysis of the molten substance. The chlorine dissipated as gas, leaving the prize behind. All that remained was a fine snow-white magnesium powder. The experiment was a grand success. That evening, he summoned the master craftsman Alex. He presented a blueprint for specialized joint connectors. These would reinforce the ship's entire frame. Without iron, they had to strengthen every critical point. The ambitious project reached completion in only 3 days. The following morning, the Eagle returned to camp. It carried his basket of vital laboratory equipment. Tan Thien spent the afternoon organizing his scientific tools. Every instrument was a lifeline for their survival. They double-checked the magnesium powder's purity. The path was grueling, but the results were undeniable. Alex began forging the connectors from the blueprints. Once reinforced, they would finally set sail. Hope flickered like a flame throughout the camp. Tan Thien felt immense pride in their shared progress. Deep Lam's craftsmanship was truly on another level. These glass tubes are exquisitely crafted, pure perfection. To create white phosphorus, one must first crush roasted bones. Once brittle, they are ground and mixed with carbon. This bone powder is then subjected to extreme temperatures. Under this intense heat, silicon dioxide reacts. It combines with the calcium phosphate in the bones. This creates calcium silicate and phosphorus pentoxide. Then, the phosphorus pentoxide is finally reduced. Using charcoal, he produced white phosphorus gas and carbon dioxide. When this gas hits the water, a transformation occurs. It turns into white particles that sink beneath the surface. Some fragments float, rising toward the top. White phosphorus is a deadly high-toxicity substance. You must maintain a safe distance at all times. One mistake means certain death. Next, they needed potassium chlorate for safety. He added the calcium hydroxide byproduct from the magnesium process. This was mixed with a potassium carbonate solution made from wood ash. This yielded calcium carbonate, precipitate, and potassium hydroxide. He then obtained chlorine gas through the electrolysis of salt water. The gas was piped into a heated potassium chloride solution. This finally produced potassium chlorate and a potassium chloride liquid. Their solubility levels are worlds apart. By adding potassium nitrate to cool the mixture, magic happens. A massive amount of potassium chlorate crystals begin to precipitate. The solution was finally yielding its secrets. Finally, he stripped and dried discarded tree branches for moisture. After some precision cutting, the matchsticks were ready. This author is a genius. This level of chemistry is peak storytelling. To create the matchhead, they needed a binder. He used glue boiled from pig bones. He mixed sand and sulfur with filtered water. The ratio was precise, 12 to 40.6. Then came the most critical step. He added potassium chlorate and red phosphorus to the mix. This is the secret behind modern safety match. They were no longer primitive. Their very first attempt was a flawless success. Within days, Alex had constructed 6 sturdy boats. Their construction speed was nothing short of miraculous. The vessels were remarkably stable and reliable. They built extra ships as backups for the long journey. 4 days later, the time for action arrived. He distributed a box of matches to every person. He demonstrated exactly how to strike them. Elu stepped forward to test the first one. A small, bright flame flickered into existence. The tribe stared in absolute awe. Truly, their Lord Shaman was a living god. To him, it was just a simple chemical reaction. All right, everyone, listen closely. We have toiled for days to build this fleet. You all know why we have done this. The time is ripe. We set out now to rescue our brothers and sisters. He handpicked 7 elite warriors for the mission. Each one was a formidable fighter. That night, he briefed them on the final plan. The next night, 2 pirates were idling near the walls. Suddenly, a divine light appeared in the distance. Could that be the Fountain of Youth? Driven by greed, they grabbed torches and rushed toward it. Captain Sun Mana was alerted to the treasure. However, he sensed a clever trap. Tan Thien had used a flashlight and lens as a decoy. It was designed to lure the main force away, but 2 guards remained behind. He stationed a few warriors outside for cover. Then, he and Katniss began to scale the walls. A 3-meter barrier could not stop them. With a single, silent leap, they infiltrated the fortress. They moved toward the prison as planned. He prepared the strong acid to melt the iron. The moment the liquid touched the metal, it dissolved. They used the acid to slice through the heavy handcuffs. The prisoners were finally being freed. The captives looked up with eyes full of hope. Stay quiet, he whispered to the trembling crowd. We are here to take you home. The acid continued to eat through the remaining locks. One by one, the tribesmen shed their shackles. Every prisoner was finally free from their chains. The shackles snapped open. Suddenly, a piercing horn shrieked through the air. Their cover was blown, and the pirate mob surged toward the prison cells. Outside, the backup team ignited white phosphorus to spark absolute chaos. The captain roared, ordering a squad to save the burning food stores, while he led the rest to the dungeons. It was true. The lighted tribe members were already scaling the perimeter walls in a desperate scramble for freedom. Tan Thien didn't hesitate, hurling his homemade explosives directly into the enemy ranks. A massive blast erupted, obliterating the front line of pirates instantly. While the tribe continued their frantic escape over the walls, the pirate captain brandished a massive blade and charged like a demon possessed. Tan Thien intercepted him immediately. The remaining pirates were still trembling from the previous explosion, too terrified to join the fray just yet. However, The captain promised a bounty of 200 gold for every native head. Greed replaced fear as the pirates went into a bloodthirsty frenzy. This time, his bombs were swatted aside, rendering them useless as the tension peaked. Suddenly, a rain of fire arrows hissed down, turning the pirates into living torches. The twins were providing cover from the darkness. They had coated their arrows in a lethal combination of animal fat and volatile white phosphorus. Upon impact, the phosphorus would ignite instantly. The grease acted as a fuel, ensuring the flames at the arrowhead consumed everything they touched. Taking advantage of the flaming chaos, Qin Tian activated his Sagittarius talent, raining precise death upon the panicked enemy. They were vastly outnumbered, and he was nearly overwhelmed until the patriarch stepped in. He told his son-in-law not to worry about the rear. "Keep moving. These lowlifes are nothing to me." The patriarch roared. His hidden combat power was truly terrifying to behold. He began rearranging their faces with brutal, bone-shattering kicks. A single strike sent for men flying, their features completely distorted by the impact. The patriarch stood like an immovable mountain, holding the line alone. Thanks to his strength, the tribe members managed to slip away into the night. Between Nick and the iron-clawed pirate, the battle was a dead heat. Only Kata's side seemed to be falling into a dangerous situation. Kata was locked in a desperate duel with the captain. He was being pushed back, his primitive weapons no match for the captain's heavy steel. With his fire arrows exhausted, he threw a flash bomb and screamed for everyone to shut their eyes. The blinding burst of light stunned the enemy, allowing the team to escape the perimeter. Once everyone had cleared the fence, he tossed a smoke canister behind them, leaving the pirates coughing and disoriented in a thick, gray haze. The dark forest was a nightmare for trackers, but the furious captain wouldn't back down, ordering his men to hunt them with torches. Seeing the orange flickers approaching, Qin Tian signaled the group to vanish into the thick undergrowth immediately. Those small torches were useless against the deep shadows. 30 minutes later, however, they stumbled upon another pirate patrol. The torchlight was blindingly bright in the pitch-black woods. Once again, Qin Tian's group held their breath and successfully evaded detection. That made the third pirate squad they had narrowly avoided. The air was thick with the scent of pursuit. The pirates thought the light gave them an advantage, but it only exposed them. Suddenly, one of the hunters stopped. He had smelled the scent of blood. It was a ruse. They had feigned retreat, only to douse their lights and wait. Kata and Nick instantly lunged forward to finish them off. Before the pirates could even reach for their signal whistle, the twins' arrows had already pierced their throats. Though he had steeled his heart, the sight of such carnage was chilling. Silently, the group resumed their march through the abyss of the forest. "Listen closely. I'll cover you with flash and smoke bombs. Then I'll lure them away from your position." Someone had to be the decoy. Several people volunteered, but Qin Tian knew that high-speed running was his ultimate specialty. And so, he led the hunters away to secure the tribe's escape. At the perfect moment, he activated his speed boost to vanish like a ghost. After successfully shaking them off, he hid in the brush. He realized that surviving on this island had exponentially increased his physical limits. In the past, using his innate talent for this long would have left him paralyzed with fatigue. Now, he felt stronger than ever. Suddenly, a horn blasted nearby. Countless torches appeared, forming a ring of fire as they began surrounding his hiding spot. He knew this terrain well from their previous scouting. Every path and ridge near the enemy camp was burned into his mind. The earlier escape had been chaotic, but he knew the general direction was toward the 9 o'clock position. He decided to gamble everything. Qin Tian threw his final flash bomb and sprinted toward a towering cliff. He leaped into the darkness, deploying the parachute Alex had prepared. This was his first time attempting such a stunt. He could only pray to the heavens for a safe landing on his feet. The pirates watched in utter disbelief, unable to comprehend that someone would actually dare to jump into the abyss. The captain was beyond livid. He began shoving his own subordinates down the slope, screaming at them to find the intruder. Meanwhile, Qin Tian had landed safely on a narrow, rocky ledge. He was temporarily safe from the tide, but he was effectively trapped. The pirates who fell from the height met a gruesome end. At that same time, the survivors finally reunited with Nick at Jessica's hideout. Joy filled the camp as they realized everyone was safe. But far away, Qin Tian sat shivering against the cliff. As the search continued, he couldn't stay there and wait for death. But the vast sea and empty beach offered no easy way out. Blinded by the shadows, he yearned to reach the shore, but the distance was insurmountable. At least his rations would buy him a few more days of life. He scrambled to gather driftwood from the crashing waves, desperately trying to fashion a raft. But despite his efforts, the crude vessel refused to take shape. The flimsy branches were no match for the ocean's fury. Just as hope began to fade, a familiar winged messenger finally descended from the sky. Qin Tian quickly penned a report, marking his coordinates and adding a dire warning. The pirates were still nearby, and danger lurked in every shadow. Time slowed as he waited in agonizing silence. Sunset bled across the horizon with no sign of rescue. Perhaps tomorrow would bring better fortune. Suddenly, a silhouette cut through the twilight. It was Nick and his crew, racing toward him against the dying light of the setting sun. Nick's men had pushed their bodies to the absolute limit to reach him. They were spent, and an immediate escape was now physically impossible. They had no choice but to bunker down for the night. Fortunately, they had not come empty-handed, bringing vital food and water supplies. Tents were pitched across the jagged terrain. Though the coral reef was a harsh host, it offered the safety they so desperately needed. After a night of much-needed recovery, the four of them set out at dawn. Their destination was the safety of the main ship. They successfully slipped past the pirate blockade undetected. Jessica had the vessel ready to sail the moment their feet touched the deck. Under the cloak of darkness, they began their silent transit. Once they reached open water, Jessica ordered the boats linked for the night. 2 grueling nights on the reef had broken Qin Tian's body. His muscles screamed and his spirit was pushed to the absolute breaking point. He collapsed into the cabin, falling into a deathlike slumber. Several hours later, Amber arrived with a hot meal to revive his spirits. As he shared his harrowing tale, Jessica listened in trembling silence. Her heart hammered against her ribs at every mention of his near-death encounters. High above, at the break of dawn, the pirates finally breached the Lada tribe's territory. Their long hunt had finally led them here. But the village was a ghost town. While the pirates searched empty huts, the tribespeople were already miles away on the island's far side. After an arduous hour of trekking, the group reached the camp. Deep Lamb stood waiting, her face lighting up with pure, unbridled joy. The natives fell to their knees, hailing her as the great priestess. Deep Lamb ignored them, throwing herself into his arms while weeping. You were gone for so long without a single word. I was terrified. If I lost you, I do not know what I would have done. That afternoon, the rich aroma of wild boar soup filled the air. One taste was enough to breathe life back into their exhausted bodies. Qin Tian assessed their growing numbers. With 47 tribespeople and the 3 of them, their small community had reached exactly 50 souls. The camp was bursting at the seams. While they could sleep in shifts, any movement resulted in a chaotic tangle of limbs and bodies. Even Whitey and the other animals were being squeezed out. Expanding the camp was no longer just a goal, it was a necessity for survival. After a brief respite, the Leda warriors sprang into action. They began lighting massive signal fires across the clearing to ward off the cold. Concentric circles of fire were formed to trap the heat. Nestled between the flames, the tribespeople finally felt the biting chill begin to fade. Qin Tian erected specialized tents for the frail, including Aruba. That night, a rare sense of peace settled over the weary survivors. For Deep Lamb, the weight of worry had been unbearable. While Qin Tian and Jessica were missing, restful sleep had been a distant luxury. He woke the next afternoon to find himself enveloped in the warmth of his 2 wives. Their relief was palpable as they held him close. A newfound sense of security and warmth filled the camp. Together, they were finally ready to forge a new destiny in this wild land. He realized then that he had somehow become nothing more than a human pillow for the 2 exhausted women to hug. After a quick breakfast, the able-bodied were split into 3 squads. Team 1 followed Qin Tian deep into the forest to harvest bamboo. Jessica led the second team to the river's edge, while Deep Lamb managed the remaining tasks back at the heart of the camp. Under his expert command, the camp hummed with the rhythm of progress. Everything was proceeding exactly according to his grand plan. Bamboo structures rose from the earth in record time. That night, they celebrated their success with a grand feast and dancing around the fire. The chief surprised him by speaking in fluent English. He had learned the tongue years ago while serving alongside the British Army. With a humble heart, the tribal leader knelt before him, offering his eternal thanks for saving his people from a dark fate. Qin Tian's knowledge of modern tech had always been suspicious, but the chief did not care. Their survival was the only truth that mattered. The next day, Qin Tian organized the labor force once more. Solving the housing crisis remained their most critical objective for the tribe. Even with the new bamboo shelters, the camp was completely saturated. They had to push the boundaries of their territory immediately. One group fired bricks, while another gathered seashells. A third team cleared the dense forest to make room for their expanding world. He demonstrated how to transform the sea's bounty into building materials. By mixing sand with powdered shells, they created a powerful mortar. Just add water and stir until it is perfect. Stacking bricks is easy, once you master the art of spreading the mortar evenly. Suddenly, one of the men tried to knock a wall over to test its strength. It was infuriating. The structure had only just been built. Of course, his skepticism was short-lived. By the next morning, that troublemaker Kata would see the true strength of modern engineering. He poured every ounce of his beastly strength into the strike, leaving me utterly speechless. Thankfully, the wall held firm against the onslaught. The village elder wept nearby, moved by the promised warmth. When the Leda tribe first arrived on this desolate isle, it was autumn. Born of the desert, we were ill-prepared for the biting cold. It wasn't long before the harsh climate began claiming lives, one by one. Death lurked everywhere. Many fell to savage beasts or perished in agony after consuming poisonous mushrooms while foraging. Winter here was no joke. A week after the Leda tribe crossed the peninsula, those Viking pirates were still relentlessly hunting them down. Without a doubt, the swamp stood as the island's most treacherous domain. Beyond the ferocious crocs and serpents, the true silent killer was the odorless methane gas, capable of stealing a life in a heartbeat. The Vikings gathered at the swamp's edge, but hesitated. Even they knew better than to challenge this death zone before winter arrived. By the next morning, everyone gathered to witness Deep Lamb's mastery in glassmaking. Alex Ever, the curious professional, decided to try her hand at it. Her artisan skills far surpassed both him and Deep Lamb, producing truly exquisite pieces. Tanthin turned his focus to redesigning the camp's layout. Dinner was fish again a meal. He was growing dreadfully tired of. While pork remained in their stores, they had to be strategic. It was strictly reserved for the peak of winter, to ensure everyone's morale. It was time to diversify their diet. He consulted the chief about a wild boar hunt. His vision was to domesticate them and secure a steady food supply for the camp. The following day, thanks to Esedu's keen eyes, they finally locked on to their target. While the wild boars slumbered, they sprung their trap. Disguised in boar hides, they sent the entire herd into a panicked frenzy. They herded the beasts into a massive pit, successfully trapping every single one before calling for sturdy cages. 7 boars in total, a mix of males and females, a perfect start for a sustainable herd. Back at base, the pens were ready. In the days that followed, Tanthin's relentless hunting continued to bear fruit. Soon enough, the camp's boar population skyrocketed to By day 4, the Eagles found the forest empty of boars. The system chimed in, awarding him 5,000 reward points for the camp upgrade. Combined with his previous earnings from crafting his score surged past 13,000, enough to unlock a new talent. Deep Lamb and the crew churned out over 50 jars in a day, a feat of top-tier craftsmanship that left him stunned. They moved on to canning. The process was simple, sterilizing the glass jars alongside peeled grapes and pineapples in boiling water. Once sterilized, the fruits were carefully packed into their respective glass containers. They sealed the jars tight with heat-treated hides. By dawn, he led a party toward the volcano to mine iron and forge better weapons. This was all preparation for the coming clash with the Vikings. Their journey remained uneventful throughout the first day. As the sun dipped below the peaks, they found a safe haven in the woods to kindle a fire and rest. Reaching the volcano by morning, the team threw themselves into mining. 2 hours in, exhaustion began to set in. Still, they secured enough raw materials to begin forging. Returning to camp, heavily burdened but ready to fortify their defenses. But when the iron ore proved elusive, they were forced to shift their search to a new area. An entire afternoon spent digging yielded nothing but volcanic rock. Even after a night's rest, their luck didn't seem to change. Process of elimination was their only hope. On the 4th day, the grueling labor continued. Suddenly, one of the men unearthed a heavy stone. It was pyrite. The reserves were massive and enough to arm everyone with iron. This volcanic trek had finally paid off. At dawn on day 5, they erected a blast furnace at camp, ready to transmute ore into legendary steel. Unlike arrows, iron required relentless hammering and refining to purge impurities, ensuring the blades wouldn't shatter in battle. He first forged iron pickaxes to boost their mining efficiency. By day 6, their progress had more than doubled. Suddenly, a chilling wind swept through. The temperature was plummeting at an alarming rate. The tribesmen knew the signs. Winter would arrive in just 1 month. Their time for mining was running out. They had enough, or for everyone's weapons. Though he had hoped to smelt every last bit of pyrite before leaving. Every extra scrap of iron mattered, but time had become their most ruthless enemy. On the 7th day, they packed their heavy loads and began the long trek back through the dense forest. They found a campsite just before dusk, but Kata's instincts suddenly flared. Something dangerous was approaching. A saber-toothed tiger. One strike from a shovel barely phased the beast, prompting him by 2, lunge forward, stand, and fight. Knowing tigers hunt in packs, he warned everyone to stay alert. An ambush. Another beast lunged from the brush, shattering their wooden shields instantly. Luckily, Nick intervened just in time. 3 lethal saber-toothed tigers had them surrounded. Stay on guard. Hambai had already been wounded by those savage fangs. He wouldn't let his brothers fall. But these predators were cunning, waiting to strike. They lurked in the shadows. Tanthin activated his feline reflexes and leopard speed. He struck like lightning, dropping 2 beasts. But the sensory overload left him reeling. The mental drain was massive. Meanwhile, Hambai finally finished off the last tiger. A roar of triumph. He proved he wasn't dead weight. Well done, my brother. Day 7 arrived. With Hambai injured, progress slowed as they hauled the carts manually. A grueling trek through the woods. Night fell, and they were still far from home. Fortunately, Tanthin had sent the Serpent Eagle ahead to call for reinforcements. Samba's team arrived, helping them reach safety by dawn. Finally, he sought some rest. Deep Lamb then revealed the grand blueprints for the camp's 8 major functional zones. Quarters, kitchens, baths, and even a laboratory. The vision for their new home was complete. They forged a workshop for crafting and a high-temp smeltery for heavy metal. The living quarters and farms were finished, including a private space for Hanbai. The construction crew worked tirelessly. Total completion of the camp was finally within reach. Fruit production was a success. Grapes and pineapples were harvested while he was away. Survival continued. While Virus fished, Soma's group successfully domesticated wild chickens from the forest. Temperatures plummeted. He led the tribe in sewing winter hides and insulated footwear. The next mission? Weapon forging. They began building a specialized furnace to melt iron. He aimed to refine iron into steel by manipulating the carbon levels within the metal. Carbon content dictates hardness. Higher levels create a stronger, more legendary blade. Cast iron is hard but brittle. Wrought iron is flexible but weak. Balance was key. Steel is the ultimate prize, combining strength and flexibility. It was their only choice. He chose the complex co-fusion method, layering wrought iron inside the intense blast furnace. Molten cast iron was poured over the core. Meanwhile, others prepared the skin. They carved bamboo hilts with precision, ensuring each one matched its blade perfectly. Sanded, smooth, and bonded with fish glue, the swords neared completion under his eye. Strike the ingot. He purged every impurity, testing the young man's very soul. Forging steel is a test of fire. Finally, the day of creation had arrived. Using a secret tempering paste, he prepared the final hammer strokes for the blade. This coating ensured a lethal edge and a flexible spine, a masterpiece of ancient engineering. The first steel sword was born. He challenged Nick to prove its true power. With his beast talents active, he moved too fast for Nick to even react. Suddenly, the elder asked for a wedding date. The father-in-law wanted the ceremony today. Wait, what? In this tribe, challenging a woman in combat is actually a proposal. Victory meant he had claimed Nick. If he refused, she'd be exiled forever. An exile by the shaman is a death sentence, inviting disaster upon the village. Jessica intervened, claiming the great priest must conserve his divine power for the gods. A 3-year wait between wives is mandatory. He still has 2 years left. Deep Lamb is first, then me, then Nick. Do you all understand the order? He stood there speechless. He had walked right into a beautiful, polygamous trap. Quite the lucky streak. For now, Alex focused back on the fires of creation. Beyond the construction and culinary units, his focus shifted to weaponry. The Lin then formed a 3rd specialized task force. Their mission, crafting fur garments to survive the biting frost. Soon, white flakes drifted down, filling the children with joy. They played safely, no longer fearing the deadly chill. Meanwhile, he drafted a lethal blueprint for a game-changing firearm. This was the ultimate deterrent against monsters and pirates alike. Entering the kitchen, thick, suffocating smoke greeted his eyes. The survivors huddled around open flames for warmth. This premature freeze was brutal. If November was this harsh, December would be hell. They desperately needed charcoal. By carbonizing timber without oxygen, they would create a fuel source far superior to raw wood. It burned hotter and, crucially, produced almost zero smoke. Finally, they could breathe easily while staying warm indoors. Checking on the Hanbai and Esade, he found them resting peacefully. Their thick natural coats provided perfect insulation. These island natives had endured countless winters on this desolate rock. They were perfectly evolved for this harsh environment. To them, raging blizzards were just another day. But for the humans, the coming dawn brought a new, urgent labor. He mobilized the colony immediately. One unit began constructing a charcoal kiln, while the others prepared the necessary fuel. Axes swung as logs were split with rhythmic precision. Within hours, the kiln was ready for its very first harvest. They sealed the chamber and ignited the flame. While the wood transformed, he presented his firearm schematics to Alex. Learning this weapon dwarfed a bow's power tenfold. She gasped. To her, this was nothing short of a divine artifact. Mass production required a precision lathe. Driven by steam power, his meticulous designs were finally becoming a tangible reality. The Lin joined Alex, crafting the intricate molds by hand. At sunrise, they opened the kiln to find perfect black charcoal. The fuel was incredibly efficient and smokeless. However, he sternly warned them, always keep a window crack to prevent silent suffocation. That concludes today's chapter. Please like and share to fuel our journey and unlock even more epic stories for you. Together, we will witness this world's ultimate evil.